Good afternoon. Welcome to the regular Township of Whitewater regular council meeting for Wednesday, September 1, 2020 at 4:52 p.m. As we gather, we would like to acknowledge on behalf of council and our community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We would like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history, and we are extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Stand for the prayer, please. Almighty God, we give thanks for the great blessings which have been bestowed on Canada and its citizens, including the gifts of freedom, opportunity, and peace that we enjoy. Guide us in our deliberations as township councillors and strengthen us in our awareness of our duties and responsibilities. Grant us wisdom, knowledge, and understanding to preserve the blessings of this country for the benefit of all and to make good laws and wise decisions. Amen.
My computer broke.
Do you want mine?
Can you get on the bill?
Okay, thank you. Now I'll ask council at this time any disclosure of interest for this evening. Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you. Now we're moving on to item 4, public meetings, zoning bylaw.
Never mind.
Pardon me?
I was talking to council. Sorry.
So then we turn this over to Ivan, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'll just read a quick planner statement relating to the public meeting for 3 zoning bylaw amendments. If any person or public body does not make written or oral submission at the public meeting or submissions to the Township of Whitewater region before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of council to the local planning appeal tribunal. The person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal to LPAT unless in the opinion of the tribunal there are reasonable grounds to do so. Under Section 3411 of the Planning Act, it states that if council decides to refuse an application or refuses to make a decision on an application within 120 days of the receiving of the application, the applicant or the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing may appeal to the local planning appeal tribunal by filing an appeal with the clerk of the municipality. Under Section 3419 of the Planning Act, it states that not later than 20 days after giving notice of the passing of the bylaw, the applicant, any person or public body who made oral submissions at the public meeting or made written submissions to council before the bylaw was passed may appeal to the local planning appeal tribunal by filing an appeal with the clerk of the municipality. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And this is Queen's Line. Two zoning bylaw amendments are for the properties described as part of Lot 24 and 25, Concession 7, Queen's Line. Will the staff please give an overview of the application?
Yes, thanks. So the present report in front of council now relates to 2 zoning bylaw amendments, and these 2 amendments are conditions of severances pertaining to the lands that are described as noted by Mayor Moore. Essentially, the properties that we're referring to are the Dunbar Farm properties, and council may recognize these properties with the wedding venue that was constructed there some number of years ago. Essentially, what Albert and Therese Dunbar are proposing to do is to sever off the wedding venue and the adjacent house that also supports that wedding venue as its separate property, which they would continue to hold in ownership and continue to rent out. Secondly, the second severance pertains to a lot addition for a half-acre lot that is just at the corner of the property. It's currently vacant, and they're proposing to increase it to 1 acre to be a more appropriate size for development. And all of the retaining lands, which are huge farmlands, ranging from about 166 acres. Those lands are currently in a purchase and sales agreement with an adjacent farmer, in fact, who's looking to purchase these lands and essentially use these lands for agricultural purposes for the future. So the zoning bylaws in front of council are essentially to create consistency amongst the zoning categories of these properties. Secondly, to restrict residential uses on the farmland, so that 166 acres would be protected forever and a day for agricultural purposes, as well as to reduce the minimum frontage to access that farmland at 20 meters. And maybe one last final thing is there's also a proposal to add the use of a bed and breakfast to the lands that contain the wedding venue and that dwelling. So they may choose to, maybe at some point in the future, to use that dwelling as a bed and breakfast. So ultimately what we'll end up here is one property which will be 1 acre in size, that'll be vacant, the property that contains the wedding venue and the house, and then the 166 acres that'll be protected forever and a day, if you will. So staff are supportive of this approach. The Committee of Adjustment approved the 3 severances as well. So we're just looking for council's consideration on this matter. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Do we know if the applicant is present?
Maybe I'll note we do have Forbes Simon, who is the representative on behalf of the applicant. Forbes works with JP2G Consultant, who's filed the applications, and he's present virtually here on the video. Okay,
would Forbes like to speak?
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm here representing Mr. Dunbar, and I support the recommendations of your planner's report, and I'm available to answer any questions that you or council may have.
Okay, thank you. So the motion is that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve 2 amendments to the zoning categories of the properties described as part of Lot 24 and 25, Concession 7, Queen's Line, to implement the zoning modifications outlined in the planner's report. Can I get a motion and a seconder, please? Reeve Rigier and Councillor Jackson. Questions? Comments? Seeing none, ask for a vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. So now we move on to our second one, which is Hawthorne Road. So back to Ivan, please.
Yeah, thanks so much. So this present application, again, submitted by JP2G Consultants on behalf of Wilhelmus and Isabella Stoop. It pertains to a property that fronts on Hawthorne Road with a reduced frontage of 20 meters. This property was reviewed by the Committee of Adjustment and supported. However, one of the concerns pertain to the fact that the property is sort of an L-shaped. It's essentially sort of a lot behind another lot. And in order to mitigate any issues amongst property owners in the future when these lots are developed, it was recommended that a condition be imposed to increase the minimum side yard width between those 2 lots to 30 meters for any structures and outdoor storage. So the present report speaks to the reduced lot frontage to 20 meters, as well as to increase that side yard setback to 30 meters to try to reduce or mitigate any impacts between property owners. So again, staff are supportive of this, and this will fulfill the condition of severance, and they will be able to proceed with the creation of that new lot. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant present?
The applicant...
Okay, yes. Does he wish to speak on this one? Mr. Forbes, do you wish to speak on this one?
All I want to do is make myself available to Chair.
Okay, thank you. So the motion is that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve an amendment to the zoning category of the property described as part of Lot 15, Concession 8, Hawthorne Road, from RU zone to Rural Exception 30 zone. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Olmsted and Councillor McLaughlin. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Now we go back to Ivan for questions.
Yeah, I would just ask if there's any members of council that have questions.
Any members of council got questions, please? Seeing none. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Now we move on to 4.3. This is Greenway Drive. So back to Ivan, please.
Yeah, thank you. So this property fronts on Greenway Drive. It is described as 14 Greenway Drive, but it is located across from about 358 Greenway Drive. So there's a little bit of an address discrepancy, but that'll be corrected through the township. Essentially, this property is just shy of an acre in size. Currently, it's located in what's called the waterfront vicinity zone, which allows for a single-family home. However, the adjacent lands directly behind it are located in what's called an extractive industrial reserve zone. Essentially, an extractive industrial reserve zone is sort of a protected zoning to lands that could potentially be used for the extraction of aggregate, so a pit or a quarry. Currently, it's not being used for those purposes. It's just sort of in a reserve zone. Our zoning bylaw stipulates that no dwellings shall be permitted within 150 meters of that zoning. So the official plan outlines that with the support of an aggregate impact assessment prepared by a professional, the approval authority may consider a reduction of that 150 meters. So the proponent has engaged JP2G consultants. They've presented to staff an aggregate impact study which demonstrates that due to the difficulty to access the aggregate, the low significance, and the distance from markets, that the extraction of that aggregate is unlikely. So they support the reduction of that setback, the 150 down to 30 meters, which would allow for the developability of this lot with a single-family home. In conversations with the property owner, she is proposing just to construct a dwelling that's about 700 or 800 square feet, so not a large dwelling. And essentially, this zoning would allow for her to do that. Lastly, the recommendation from the consultant would be that there be a vegetative buffer within that 30 meters. So that vegetative buffer would mitigate against any impacts to the future extraction of that aggregate, if ever it was to occur in the future. So staff are supportive of this, and we're looking for council's consideration. Thanks.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? Do we know?
No, the applicant is not present and has not requested to be either. Thanks.
Okay, so we'll open it up to council members for any questions. I have one. When this went to committee, then the committee was aware and committee approved?
So this was an existing lot of record, so it's always existed. It was not recently approved through severance, so it existed prior to my arrival with the township.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no questions, then we'll ask for a vote. All in favor? Oh, did we not do that yet? Sorry. Okay. The motion is that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve an amendment for the zoning category of the property described as part of Lot 7, Westmeath North Front D, Greenway Drive, from Waterfront Vicinity Zone to Waterfront Vicinity Exception 54 Zone. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Olmsted, Councillor Jackson. Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Nicholson, please.
Ivan, just the question is about the future. If that aggregate deposit is developed, lack of a better term, and it does impose on that resident, that whoever that would own that at that point in time, do they have any ability to come back and say, this is not fair, this isn't as agreed to? I didn't understand the impact of what this development would be.
So essentially what happens is if the property owner where the aggregate is in a reserve zone, if they were to apply to the ministry for a license to extract, the ministry would impose certain setbacks, and those setbacks would be from property lines. Typically you see that there's a 30-meter setback from the aggregate, the extraction area, to the property line. So in addition to the 30 meters on her property, there would also be a 30 meters and a berm likely built in that 30 meters. So I don't anticipate that the existing property owner of the EMR zoned lands would have any capability of going against or going back on this, if that's what you mean.
The resident going back?
Yeah, the resident, no, I don't anticipate, no.
Okay. Good, thank you.
With the map that's up there, do you know if it's within that red triangle that's up there, or does that go beyond that?
The EMR zone lands go beyond that. If you scroll down just slightly, and you'll see that the red property is the property in question. You see that blocky area to the left of it?
Yes.
That's the EMR zone.
Okay. So it's quite large then?
That's correct.
So they would be able to, I'm sure, get access somewhere else, I would think.
Yeah, so there's access when you come in before Greenway on Lacqua Bay Road, I think it is. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, call for a vote. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Now we move on to item 5, announcements. We'll start with Reeve Regier.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have, I have a couple here. First, the Township would like to congratulate 2 members of the roads team on their recent retirement. Ward Somerville joined the former Township of Westmeath in 1998 and served the Township and residents of Whitewater Region for 23 years. Lindsay Broadhurst started as a temporary drive operator with us in 2013 and became a full-time in 2016. Congratulations to you both and enjoy your well-deserved retirement. Dustin Denneau joined the Township as a mechanic. He previously worked at McCrae Excavating as lead truck technician and shop supervisor. He joins Terry O'Malley in ensuring the Township's fleet and equipment is maintained to support operations in all departments, including roads, landfill, and recreation. The Township's fleet and equipment has a value of $4.3 million and is critical in the delivery of municipal services. The role replaces a vacant driver-operator position. Amanda Labby is serving in the part-time contract role of Seniors Liaison Coordinator. The position is funded by the Province of Ontario's Inclusive Community Grant in support of the Seniors Pilot Project that runs until June 30th, 2022. Amanda also supports the County Seniors Without Walls initiative and was a rural outreach worker for Western Ontario Community Resource Centre. A big thank you to Andrea McIntyre, who initiated the role and got the pilot off the ground. More information can be found on the pilot and program referrals at whitewaterseniors.ca or by calling 1-833-582-7004. And I only have one more, and I just wanted to let everyone, make everyone aware that we're happy to advise that we were back at the county for our first county council meeting on August the 25th, first time since February of 2020. So it was a long time since we were all together, other than seeing each other on a screen. And it was really nice. There was a $4 million renovation that was done. And Mayor Moore joined along with the grand opening in that afternoon. So it was nice to have you with us there as well, Mayor. So thank you for coming. And yeah, there was dignitaries and tours and snacks. So it was a good afternoon, and it was just good to be back. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Olmsted.
I better have one after all that. Yeah, just one. September 18th. Cobden Legion Golf Tournament is coming up. They're looking for teams. I think they're looking for some sponsors at this time. Shotgun start at 11 a.m. Just contact somebody from Cobden Legion. I think Wayne Bennett is kind of spearheading it. Whoever, if you want to place a team or sponsor them, please contact Cobden Legion. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Councillor McLaughlin.
Yeah, Councillor Olmsted stole my thunder. But anyway, I'm glad to see that the Legion are going on with the tournament, and I know I, for one, will be sponsoring a hole for sure. Not sure if I want to golf in it though. If we can gather up a team, you might be persuaded. The other thing I want to say is a big thank you to the organizers of the dedication of the bandstand to a fitting person, Patsy Moore. The evening was a great success and it was very well done. And just want to say hats off, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to Jordan as well. Councillor Jackson.
I have nothing at this time.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
I just wanted to reiterate some of the points, or one of the points that the Reeve made, just about our Whitewater Seniors organization, and that's just to ask the other councillors that in your day-to-day activities or whoever you're engaging with, even the committees like the Library Committee or the Historical Committee or any of these organizations, I would really love if you could try to drum up awareness of our Whitewater Seniors organization. We will be having a grand opening. I think the CAO is just confirming some dates. The federal election kind of threw a little twist in things for us, so it'll be delayed till that's well in hand. But we really would like you to pass the word and share. It's not just for seniors, but it's also for family that are taking care of seniors and might just want to access or tap into the resources that are available for seniors in our community. And I don't know, Rob, is there magnets? Could we give them each magnets so they don't have to memorize their information? They can just hand them out. Awesome. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I have no announcements, so we'll move on to 6.1. CCHL Tier 2 Hockey Club. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve entering into a one-year rental agreement with the CCHL Tier 2 Hockey Club. This goes to Jordan, please. Oh, sorry. We need a motion and a seconder, please. It's been a while since I've been sitting in the chair. Reeve Rigier and Councillor Olmsted, thank you. Now we go to Jordan.
All right, thank you. I've got two reports tonight, so I'll try and make this quick. I know the agenda is pretty full. So just to give a background on this, the Whitewater Kings, they have played in Cobden for the past 4 seasons. Of course, we've both known that they've had a former owner as well as a new owner, Alex Armstrong. And the last agreement that we signed on was for a 1-year contract. And of course, it's now expired. So Mr. Armstrong had met with us, and he is interested in renewing a contract or an agreement with the township. And of course, by doing so, this agreement would support facility revenue. We're anticipating right now the first home game will be October 2nd, and of course League is very hopeful that they can return to play for the most part, despite the provincial regulations. And if everything was to work out as expected, we're hoping to run this season until February of 2022. In the report, I'm just going to scroll down to the financial implications, and I just want to note that the hourly rental rate here is based on the township's user fee schedule for Parks and Recreation. So you can see the 3 fees that are listed here that are in the agreement. And I should also note too that the Kings have nothing owing on their account from previous year. Maybe at this point in time, I'll turn it back to the chair, and if they have any questions or comments, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Jordan? Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Sorry, Jordan, just can you confirm, are they talking about the same volume of requests as they have had historically, or what indication have they
You're talking
given us?
about hourly, like how many hours a week? Yeah, absolutely. So we're looking at 3 hours a week for practices and 3 hours a week for game time. So it'd be the same historically.
Excellent. Okay. That's great news. And the other question, not directly related, but just canteen operations are still a go for that facility for this season?
Right now, we're reviewing some of the provincial guidelines and the recommendations, whatnot. So we are hopeful to focus on our operations from an ice side of things, and we will be getting that. We're looking into it as of right now. We're hopeful that it will return, but we're just focused on our ice rentals at this point in time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are we waiting on an announcement then from the Ontario government as to what can happen inside our buildings? It will be like last year, players only, or do we know?
So right now, based on the information that we have, they were hoping to get out of, they had an exit stage 3 plan, I believe, and they put that on pause. So right now we're sitting at what they've given us for stage 3, and it's much different than what we've operated from last year. We can actually put a certain amount of spectators in the building. So it's looking a lot better. It's much better than last year. It's more towards kind of being normal again. So it's a lot better for all our users.
Great, thank you. Hopefully hockey goes ahead. Councillor Jackson, please.
It may be subject to vaccinated people, effective September.
Changes every day. It's hard to keep
Yeah,
up.
It was announced today, so non-essential. So it may be affected by that, and I don't know how we're going to address that and who's going to monitor that and all of that. So I think that may be something that might be brought up on Friday at a CAO's meeting, but that is going to be difficult for a lot of smaller municipalities to monitor that because we don't have, a gatekeeper that we have. I mean, they're going to have a gatekeeper for their ticket sales, I would imagine, but are we relying on them to monitor our facility? So, always changing.
Hoping by our next meeting on the 15th or thereabouts that we'll have an update, hopefully. Anyway. Any other questions for Jordan? Councillor Olmsted.
I assume this is all in Cobden, Jordan? All the practice as well?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Seeing nothing else, we'll call for a vote. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Now we're on to 6.2, weekday user rate for Cobden Arena Hall, that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve an amendment to the user fees bylaw to establish a daytime rate of $30 for the Cobden Arena upstairs hall. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Jackson and Councillor McLaughlin. This goes back to Jordan or Sean?
Yeah, that would be myself. Thank you.
Okay.
So a bit of background on this one as well. So in 2020, Township and the Cobden Ag Society had met to discuss an updating existing agreement and talk about some of the benefits of both groups. And one of the biggest things of the agreement was to discuss harmonizing some of the rental rates to ensure that there was no competition between the two groups. So as a result, hall rental rate of $65 plus HST came into effect. Since then, delegation from the Cobden Pickleball Group came to council, and that happened earlier this year, with concerns of the cost at the hall. And this, of course, at that point in time prompted a daytime rate. So previous to this, the pickleballers, they paid $30 an hour, which included your HST. And the group had also applied through our community recreation grant, which helped supported them with their fee waiver as well as their facility use for the group. What's really interesting about this is, unlike ice rentals, there are no daytime or off-peak rates that are established for the community to use. So this is something that's really good to look into at this point in time. And right now for our daytime users, our main users are pickleballers as well as exercise groups. And while we've been able to achieve an on-peak time and harmonize our rates with the Ag Society, in our actual agreement it reads, the township is free to set its hourly rate for weekday and daytime use. So we can actually tackle two things at once. In the report, I've also provided some different rates from different municipalities. So we reached out to neighboring municipalities, asked them what their current rates are as well. And as you can see, the top one is ours, so it's $65 plus HST, which is our harmonized rate. And then you can see Bonachare Valley has a rate of $50, City of Pembroke $25, and Town of Renfrew is $25. A lot of these rates are also subject to HST, so there's HST that is included on top of this. And as far as engagement goes, in 2020, the CAO, the Mayor and Reeve, had met to discuss some of the common interests with the Ag Society. And since then, the department also engaged with the pickleball group just to basically gain an understanding of what their needs were. And also, the mayor had also spoke with them on a separate occasion as well. And we also had the delegation that appeared in front of council earlier this year. As far as our financial implications go, the community recreation grant is available for fall of 2021. So it's actually due today, September 1st. And we're looking at it, if we don't adopt a rate, our feeling is that there could be a loss of bookings as a result for daytime use. At this point in time, maybe what I'll do, I'll turn it back to the chair if there's any questions or comments.
I have a question. How does this rental now and this fee still, does it affect our COVID cleaning? How does this going to work? If there's only the one group, then we're okay, but if there was a group in between or after them, then it would require hours or what?
Yeah, so we will continue on cleaning. We've had them in the building last year as well, so our staff are used to the protocols and we're used to working with them and making sure that everything is clean and ready to go.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from council members? Councillor Nicholson, please. No? Okay. Anyone else? Okay, we'll call for a vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now we move on to 6.3, Joint RFP Audit Services. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the award of the joint RFP for audit services to McKilligan and Associates for a three-year term for the years ending December 31st, 2021, 2022, and 2023, with the option to extend for a two-year term for the years ending December 31st, 2024, and 2025. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Jackson and Councillor Umstead. This goes to Sean, I would assume.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as part of the local efficiency group service delivery review done by Dylan, it was recommended that the municipalities go together and go out on some services that we require, and one of them is auditing. And so the treasurers met and decided the first one we would tackle would be auditing. With that, we went out, the group of us, and three firms submitted proposals. Only two of those firms submitted for Whitewater Region. So that's McKilligan Associates, who currently is our auditor, and KPMG. Councillor Jackson and I met to score the proposals, and McKilligan scored 93 to KPMG's 77. So we're recommending going with McKilligan's. And then the financial implications to that is from 2016 to 2020, the township, the average we paid for auditing and bookkeeping and any kind of financial services to McKilligan's and Associates was just shy of $60,000. They came in with their audit fee with an average of, for 2021, 2022, and 2023 at just under $27,000. And in 2021, we have budgeted $40,000. So internally, what we've been doing is phasing out some of the bookkeeping services that they've been providing. I will note that for the compilation of the financial information return, McKilligan's would charge us their standard hourly rate. It is likely that this year for sure, and hopefully not for the next year, but at least for this year, we would probably need to get some assistance with that. But the goal is to eventually phase out any financial information return services from them. So I think all in all, it's a great step. It's a great thing that we did this with the other groups, and we can finally understand what the true cost of the audit should cost us. So with that, I'll turn it back to the chair for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, ask for a vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. We move on to 6.4, Infrastructure Ontario application. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the long-term financing of the 2021 John Deere 770 GP grader. Motion and a seconder, please. Reeve Regier and Councillor Jackson. And back to Sean, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is the first debenture. There's two debentures required, or two bylaws required when we have a project or a piece of equipment we are going to debenture. This is the first bylaw. This is council authorizing the long-term financing. There's no locked-in rates here at this point. This is just council saying that we would like to apply to Infrastructure Ontario to have them look at lending us the money. The grader, the amount we would debenture is $372,207.81. Based on the next report I have is we do have a 5-year rate that we will be locking in. So I use that rate here. That's a 1.32%. The yearly payment on the grader for 5 years would be just over $77,000. And then the cost of borrowing, so the interest over that 5 years is $13,645. Those repayment costs would be budgeted in the 2022 to 2026 budgets. So with that, I'll pass it back to the mayor if there's any questions.
Any questions, please? Seeing none, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. 6.5, Compactor. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region authorize a debenture bylaw for the Compactor bracket drum roller. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Olmsted, Councillor Jackson. Back to Sean, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is the second bylaw for the compactor slash drum roller, or whatever we decide to call it. So we've already went through the process in the summertime, I believe in July, for the first bylaw. So this is now, we've been approved by Infrastructure Ontario to get the money or loan the money or be loaned the money for this purchase. I'll just skip over to the financial implications here. So again, the interest rate's 1.32%. Our annual payments will be $32,659.84. In 2020, to rent that piece of equipment, just for illustrative purposes, we spent $35,240. So our yearly payment on this is less than what we were spending to rent. So it's my role to update you on the township's annual repayment limit. So the last annual repayment limit we got from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing was $1,778,859, and that was based on the 2019 financial information return. So my calculation for our 2022 annual repayment limit, which would be based on the 2020 financial information return, because that's what we have at this point in time, would be $2,194,882. With the debentures that were the projects and equipment that we've proposed to be debentured, with my estimation on what those repayments will be every year, that would bring our debt repayment limit down to $1,121,882. And if you looked at the attachment, the second attachment, I guess, is the best one to look at in terms of how I came up with that calculation. So what that means to say is our annual repayment limit, we're still in a great spot in terms of the way we've been using debt. I mean, we're taking on some here, but we still have a lot of room in that annual repayment limit. So with that, I'll turn it back to the chair if there's any questions.
Thank you. Any questions, please? Councillor Olmsted.
Yeah, with these interest rates, I wonder if the treasurer could negotiate my mortgage for me at a 1.32%. They're great rates. And this is the type of information we've been looking for, I think, for these limits, debenture limits over the last few years. So it's nice to see the treasurer proactive and giving us looks like we're about half of where we need to be, which is a nice spot to be in.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. 6.6, 2022 budget direction. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the approach and timetable for the 2022 budget. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Olmsted. Councillor Nicholson. Thank you. And this goes back to Sean or CAO?
I'll take it, Mr.
Sean,
Mayor.
okay.
Thank you. So what the intent of this report is we're at that time of year where staff is beginning to compile the 2022 budget. So we're just looking for some direction here and just a little background on kind of some pressure points where we're at. So obviously COVID-19 is not fully gone away yet. There's potential for variance. We don't know, it was mentioned earlier, it changes every day. So as staff, we just have to be cognizant of that. We have to know that in our arenas, there's more time for cleaning. We're purchasing more supplies. It may have some sort of effect on us operationally. Now, the good news is it won't be our first year with COVID-19, so we should be better prepared and continue to be better prepared every year. The Consumer Price Index, so that's defined as an indicator of changes in consumer prices experienced by Canadians. That's from Statistics Canada. In Ontario, the CPI from July 2020 to July 2021 was 3.5%. And even though we're not, the township is a corporation, and so it doesn't have a heartbeat, but it still purchases and makes purchases, we will be affected operationally by the Consumer Price Index. And it changes, but at least at the current time that we have, it's 3.5%. Federal and provincial funding, this is a pressure point because we rely heavily on the provincial government, especially as it pertains to the OMPF, the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund. At this current time, we don't have our amount for 2022, but going into this, at least I would anticipate that we'll still have some funding with it. I don't think it's going to get cut cold turkey on us. It has decreased 2.7% since 2017, but we'll go into this budget at least with the assumption that we'll receive the same amount of funding. Just note that when we do, hopefully, when I say when we do, that we will receive confirmation, that if we do see a decrease, it'll likely mean that decrease would have to be offset by the tax levy. We rely heavily on that for operating purposes, so anything that's not covered through the province, we'd likely have to pick up through our tax levy. The Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, OCIF, last year we received confirmation very late in the budget process, I think in December, maybe even the day before we passed the budget, that we would receive funding. Nothing has been committed at this time, so we'll go into the budget process not relying on any OCIF funding. If in fact we do get confirmation of OCIF funding, then we would be able to at a later time allocate that to capital projects at that point in time. If this funding is absent in 2022, the capital levy would either need to increase, funding from reserves would either need to increase, or less capital projects would occur. So typically the OCIF funding has been good for at least covering one major project. The Ontario Safe Restart Agreement, so this is the funding from the provincial government to kind of offset the operating pressures of COVID-19. My number I have here for the 2021 is incorrect. 2021, we received some funding or confirmation of funding late in 2020 to be allocated towards 2021. So our 2021 Safe Restart funding would have been $61,116. It's very unlikely that this will occur past 2022, or sorry, past 2021. So we likely will not be relying on any of those funds. We will now have to find money in our operating budget to cover the effects of COVID-19. The Canada Community Building Fund, formerly known as the gas tax, we do have confirmation that we will receive $222,291.51 in 2022. Quickly, what all this means is that we still have an infrastructure gap. There's likely going to be, the needs will outweigh the resources available, so we have to strategically plan, and that's what this is the first step in getting the direction. So just where we've kind of sat as a group, the senior management team have met, we would like to have a 1.5% operating levy increase, a 2% capital levy increase. This keeps in line with the current CPI at the 3.5%. We do not want to incur any new debt to fund 2022 approved projects. We've been extremely busy and have had a lot of projects in the last year or so where we will be incurring some debt. So we do not want to incur any more debt in the 2022 budget. And then preliminary staff cost of living adjustment at 1.5%. And I'll just go to the next steps quickly because there is a slight change. So October 18th, we would get draft budget documents, a fulsome set of budget documents to council. We would come back on November 3rd, that council meeting, and have a fulsome, but we used to do it in segments, but the plan is this year to do it in one sitting. Then we would come back again a few weeks later on November 24th for kind of the second, for the discussion of the revised budgets and kind of a second go at it. And then hopefully with everything working out, that December 15th, we would have the budget public meeting. And then early in January, have the budget bylaws adopted. So that's kind of where staff sits right now, but I'll pass it back to Mr. Mayor for any discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions at this time? Councillor Jackson?
So I don't know if I heard Sean or not, but with regards to the 1 day, full day, we're going away from that now?
Yeah, so the November 4th, November 3rd wouldn't be full, it would be at normal council time. It will probably be a full night as opposed to a full day, but it'll be after normal work hours.
Yeah, because I expressed some concern over that. I also have a concern about passing the budget early, as I like it. But this year especially, there were so many changes, and I would like to see that we have only changes in the event of an emergency once that budget is passed. There was too many budget changes that were just because and not emergency-based. I don't think it's necessary that we keep the ongoing budget forever and ever and change it as we nilly-willy feel fit during the year. I don't understand why that happened, or because I don't believe it was any emergency situation that we changed budget decisions after the fact. We had already passed our budget. The other thing is the treasurer made a comment that we do not want to incur debt. Well, that is a council decision, so I would hope that all the capital projects that are brought forth and not, set aside, that staff is making those decisions. I think staff needs to put the capital projects that are coming forth that are required, that they feel that need to be done, and then council will decide on how that will happen and whether or not we have the money or the funding, whether or not we deem that project necessary to borrow for a certain project or not. But I would hope that those projects are still brought forward and not taken off the list simply because that decision was made at a staff level. There are, as we know, our infrastructure is aging, and we know we have an infrastructure deficit. So we need to keep moving forward, and we've made great progress. I don't want to stop that. I don't want to borrow unnecessarily either, but I don't want to stop the progress. As everybody knows, the roads are in, some roads are in worse shape than others and need attention, and that all costs money. And I don't want to see us not doing capital projects, number one, because it's an election year, and number two, because, we don't want to see borrowing from the staff point of view. But those are my comments with regards to that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or concerns? Councillor Nicholson.
Sorry, Sean, my version must be outdated. Can you just review the dates again? Because I'm going off the October 27th thing here.
Yeah, so the October 27th would change to November 3rd. And the full day in brackets, you can erase that. It'll be at a normal council time after like at 4:45 start time. But we will do it in one sitting. Like, there's not going to be general operating one night, fees and charges one night. Council will receive the fulsome package well in advance. And then we'll come do a high level overview presentation. Department heads will be there to answer questions at that time. And then we would take that and come back, I think, 3 weeks later for the second kind of go around at it. So in the past, we went a lot of like week to week, whether it was a special meeting for one, then a regular council meeting for another. So this will be package out early, fulsome presentation, or we'll package it early, digest it, fulsome presentation, take feedback, digest everything, come back again on the 24th for the second kind of go, and hopefully final go at that time, but we'll see, and then move on from there.
The only thing I want to add is just, it'll be the only item on the 3rd, and as we know, our agendas are busier because a lot of planning items, to be fair, and other projects that are kind of culminating. So what we've done over the last 4 years is kind of do it in dribs and drabs, but then people go, oh, I didn't realize we were increasing landfill fees. So we're trying to give you a comprehensive view as much as possible, and to Councillor Jackson's point, outline all the items, try to fit it within that framework, but it's just a framework. And like Sean has said, well, we have some debt that comes on the books, and there's the infrastructure gap, so you'll get a fulsome list and see if it fits within the framework or not, but it's just, instead of us coming up with a number, just making sure that you're okay with kind of a framework. And viewing the budget in its whole. So you're not viewing the revenue separate and the fees separate from the operating and the capital, that you should view it as a whole and also get a whole picture of the entire corporation, not just roads and forget about fire. and just try not to drag it on to meetings where there's a ton of other stuff. So trying to make sure that there's dedicated budget meetings. And you do have the meetings in December should you need more time. So just to say that this is just an outline, but if you need more time in December, even if you need more time in January, there's the flexibility to, Sean's kind of got us all working on our numbers and working on our projects to make sure that we can get the information, the package to council in advance. I know from a staff perspective, in fairness to the treasurer, sometimes we're butting up right up to when maybe the operating's being presented to council or the fees. So we're trying to, in fairness to finance, try to get everybody lined up so that he's not scrambling and putting the pieces together separately, that he can view the budget as a whole. So we've been trying to work towards that as a team to make sure the treasurer can look at it and analyze it and see and make the best advice possible for council.
So if I can just comment, the timeline, although I can appreciate, I like the idea of doing the budget wholesomely, like we get to see it all at once, so one decision doesn't have unintended consequences on a subsequent night. I think the full day, doing it on a full work day would be optimal, but unfortunately, not everybody is available, so I can appreciate that too. My concern is that on November 3rd, you're getting up at 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the morning, putting in a full day, and yes, we can have an extra long meeting and it'll go to 10 o'clock at night, but the department head who presents at 8 p.m. or later is going to get half of the attention that he should get, and who will that be? The lowest priority on the totem pole? I'm just concerned that we won't be able to interact with that department head in his presentation effectively past 8 p.m. And if we have to, maybe we split it into 2 nights. We do Wednesday, Thursday night. I don't want to suggest that as the way to do it, but I just don't want to have it where we're just nodding and going, okay, 15 more minutes. Jump to the conclusion, especially if it's an important area. So that's my feedback on that, and I'll let the other councillors. The second thing is just the stuff that is presented. I'm curious more about life cycle management of roads, and I know I've been harping on this with poor Lane, answering my questions every time he presents a new roads project. But I'm curious, how many kilometers of road should we be trying to do every year? Or can we even afford to do all the roads that we can? And I don't know if that's achievable in this budget. Maybe it's next year. I don't know how that fits into our life cycle management program planning, but I echo with Councillor Jackson. I'd rather, if we have the assets, we have a responsibility to the taxpayers to maintain them. And if we don't, we're just shoveling that down the road. So we might have to make some hard decisions. Maybe we need to borrow. Maybe we need to shut down some things. But that has to be presented to us. And I would like it in light of a life cycle management perspective. So, and the third point, sorry, Mayor, I usually go in threes, is just, I also like that wish list. Right? These are the things that, these are the 10 things that we're going to do. And this is the 11th. If money comes available, or if you want to reprioritize, or if something changes, this is the 11th item that is next on our list based on the circumstances presented to us at the budget meeting. So we know there's something programmed. It's not first come, first serve, biggest shiny item. We've decided on the next step that comes. Good. I have one thing. I've lost it, but I know if someone else talks, I'll remember it. I'll let other people talk.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jackson.
I agree with Councillor Nicholas, and I don't see, to say that, to put the budget as a wholesome factor, well, there's 2 different avenues of collecting fees and user fees, and then the regular tax rates. So one is water and sewer. I think that can be taken out of the overall general levy discussions. That can be a separate night, in my opinion, because it doesn't relate to the tax rates. It's a water and sewer. So unless there's projects, a road project that requires water and sewer in a capital project, then discuss it at, discuss it at the water and sewer that night, and then do the general levy, just to shorten it up. I don't know how long it's going to be. We've never done it this way. I think it can be done in 2 nights to present it, definitely. I think it could be passed, no problem, in January. But I agree with Councillor Nicholson to put everything, all 3 items, water, sewer, and general, all on one night. It's going to be a long night. And unfortunately, I'm not available during the day. There are others in the room as well that aren't available during the day. And that was one of the things we changed when we came on board 7 years ago, was to go away from the daytime meetings. And as well, the public isn't available either. Whether they're sitting here in the building or they're sitting online, they also have jobs to attend to, and it's not fair for them. So I think to be, I get it, that staff work and they're here all day, and well, I'm at my office all day as well, and then have to come here at night. So I think if we can try to revisit this schedule so that it's broken up. I don't know about the following Wednesday or the Wednesday before. I mean, in the past, we've gone every Wednesday for a couple of months to get it done. Maybe we do two Wednesdays in a row, which would make it 3 Wednesdays in a row, really. But I don't know. It's just a suggestion, because it is gonna get long. But hopefully having the documentation ahead of time as well will make a difference. You're going to have all of the, and then you can ask the questions before the actual budget meeting. And if your questions aren't answered in a time, before the budget meeting or to your satisfactory, you can ask them again, would be my suggestion. Ask them in front of everybody else. But certainly if we get all the documents on the 18th, you're going to be able to see, from what I understand from the treasurer, is you're going to be able to see the 2020 budget, or the 2021 budget, as well as the 2022 proposed budget. You can see the changes. I've also asked the treasurer to highlight any changes if there were any decreases in the budget, such as recreation, when we only budgeted for a half year of expenses and a half year of revenue, that be noted, that, in 2021 we budgeted a half year, in 2022 we're budgeting the full year for those types of things. If there was training reduced, just so that we know to get back to normal. But, and that might alleviate some of the questions that we'll get back to the treasurer between the time he delivers the document, because we're normally getting it the day of, right? So we should have those questions ahead of time.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor McLaughlin?
Well, I've been around for a long time, and yes, we used to designate one day. And that was when we did budget, and it went through the whole day. I totally agree with both Councillor Jackson and Councillor Nicholson, to try and do this all at one night, it's not going to be good, because at the end you're just going to you're good till 9 o'clock, and then after that it's way too much. Like you say, we put in a whole day, and then we put another 5 hours on top of it. This is important, and I think we need to be sharp when we're doing it. So I have a few ideas. I'm wondering if there's possible that you could start the meeting earlier, if there was any possible way of doing that. And I like more what Councillor Nicholson said, do it one night, do it the next, and then follow up the next night, because it's still fresh in your mind. So if we could pick 2 nights, but to try and do it all in one night, I don't think it's good. As Councillor Jackson says, I think we could split the water and the sewer for another night, be even a week later, whatever, but we need to, it's too long. It's just way too long. I think I'm willing to go till 9 o'clock, and after that, I think it's time we call it quits and figure out. So I say turn it back to staff, see what plan they can come up with that would be suitable.
Okay, thank you. Reeve Gear.
This is really thinking outside the box, so don't shoot me. But I'm just wondering if we could possibly flex staff time and do it on a Saturday, which would not interfere with anyone that works during the day, if that could be a possibility, if we flex that time. Just putting that out there for a thought.
What would the CAO say about that?
Well, your managers, from an overtime perspective, get straight time and they max out at 70, and most, I think, will have hit that. So from an overtime perspective, I don't think it has a burden on council. What I would say is there is a second date, November 24th. So I think the whole point is what you get through on November 3rd, you get through on November 3rd. You have a separate dedicated day, November 24th, and the public meeting is only the 15th. So if you need more time, additional time can be presented. I think, though, getting the documents in advance. So what would happen in the past is you would get it on your table and it would be overviewed. You would not get it in advance. So I think seeing how that would do. I think we can make Saturday work from a staff perspective, but I think November 3rd, you have so everybody's talked about 2 meetings. You have 2 meetings booked, the 3rd and the 24th. I think if Sean's presenting and goes, okay, this is we'll need more time, then there's flexibility to call a special meeting in the course of November. So I think if people can just make sure that they're available the 3rd and the 24th, and the regular meetings, and I'll reiterate the other point is, we can't tack it onto regular meetings because there's a lot of other stuff, but you can call a special meeting at any time. Saturday could work, but I think you have 2 dates here to work around, and I think from our part in getting our act together for the treasurer's sake and getting him the information, we're on track. So I know we've looked at, he's already given us the codes and the operating lines to provide, and people are working on their capital projects. So I think the 3rd and the 24th would give you those 2 dates, and so if we need to split the presentation and the questions, but if you're getting all the documents on October 18th, it will also give you lots of time. You used to get that on the table and we would overview it as you saw it. You're going to get it in advance. So what I would say is if we could stick to the 3rd and 24th, we have a lot of flexibility into February if we need to add meetings and push the public meeting back. We'd still be ahead of the game. Good old days, May. Some of this would get passed when rates got passed. So we're still ahead of the game, and I think we can meet the 3rd and the 24th, no problem. But I'd leave it to the treasurer, but I think from a meeting, making sure regular business and this, and how cognizant of council having some long meetings the last year, I think, and Carmen and I trying to balance out the agendas, we think we can make sure the 3rd and the 24th are exclusively budget, and if you need more meetings, you can schedule more meetings. That's not a problem.
Okay, Councillor Olmsted.
I hate the thought of it, but I get the idea of an all-day meeting, and that personally, I know it would take me to kind of book a day away, but I love the thought of just digging in, barging through it, have our discussions and getting it over with. I know that it's not for everybody, and we all have different priorities, but that's I would book a day away from work and just gut it through.
So you're in favor of a Saturday?
I'm in favor of whatever date he had here for the all day,
Okay.
whatever day it may be. I'm flexible. I can come and go pretty much as I want. I know everybody can't do that, but I really like the thought of just gutting through a day and getting over with.
Well, and I think it'll help too if we actually get it early. And with me, when I say early, I mean in my hand, not on a computer. And we have to be able to read it without a magnifying glass. Like, I know our budget is tight, but this is ridiculous. So, any other questions? Oh, we need many more. Councillor Jackson, please.
Yeah. My problem, as you know, I'm also going through budget discussions at where I work. So I'm full of during the day. So that's why I can't afford to take a day at that time of the year, because I'm also doing the same thing for where I work. So it makes it difficult for me to take a day away. It's difficult to take a day away most days. Yeah, I know. The other thing is I just want to make it clear, so when we say approve the approach and timetable, are we also taking the approach of the percentage increase for CPI that we're asking staff to come back with that percentage increase? And I can't remember what it was. I can't find it in here.
1.5.
1.5. And I guess my question to you, Sean, is that going to be enough considering all of the cutbacks that we did in recreation and it otherwise with regards to COVID-19 cutbacks? Is that going to be any problem sticking to a 1.5 increase on the 2021 budget? Not the 2020, but the 2021 budget. That's my concern. I don't know if this is the time to implement that. I think next year or the year after or whatever, whenever we smooth things out and we understand where we're going. I just don't know, and I'm not saying I want to see an increase higher than that, but when you come in with your full costs of the full year and your full revenue, is it going to be, and there might be less revenue because there might be less kids now because people have lost their jobs or whatever, or, you know, even though there's lots of jobs out there. I don't know if a 1.5 is reasonable. I'd like to say it was reasonable, but right now I don't know.
I would just say that it, I don't know either, but I would say that it's a starting point and it's somewhere where we can at least begin the process as opposed to not having a number in mind. I mean, if we get into it and we start looking at it and 1.5 is going to be a massive cut of services, well, then we would adjust that, and I'm sure council, well, I'm not going to speak for you, but I would assume that you'd want us to adjust that. So I think just the 1.5 based on like the 2% for capital and the 1.5 with the target of the CPI, like just having that in mind is just the start of the process. So if it becomes where that's really not great and there's going to be a cut of services, well, we would adjust that and we'd have a reason to, but it's a starting point for now.
Yeah, or at least when you present it, that you presented, okay, this one is over, you know, there's a reason why it's over the 1.5%, and this is why.
Yeah.
And then council then decides whether or not there's going to be a service cutback or not, or we're just going to increase it or whatever. But again, those are all kind of council decisions, but I would like to know if, I would like to aim for 1.5, don't get me wrong, I think that's a great number. I'm just concerned that we may not be able to hit it because of the cutbacks from last year.
And Councillor Jackson, we may not be able to, I don't have it all, like I don't have all of the info from the managers at this point. I think for us, I mean, we could put that target at 2.4, we could put it anywhere. I think it's just, it gives us something where we get the first draft, we look at it and we say, you know, this doesn't fit within, and maybe at the end of the day, when we end up going through the process with council, the nights of the night or what the nights or whatever we end up deciding the process is going to be, that it changes at that time. But I think this is just to give us some direction on, because it's easy for me to go in there and be like, no, you can't do it. No, you can't do it. No, you can't do it. And they say, well, I'm doing it. And then we don't really have direction as a team. So this is to get some direction as a group to at least strive towards.
Because I know what other municipalities do. Council makes a decision before the budget discussions start and say, okay, we're not going above 1.5%. And yes, that's a hard number. So staff don't come back unless it's at 1.5% or lower, right? And I just don't know where we cut and how. Like it was a year ago, right, where we discussed the budget almost. So I'm just not convinced. But come back with what you need, I guess is what I'm saying. And 1.5 is a soft, you know, but identify why it would have to go above 1.5.
Yeah, and I think that
Does that make sense?
You know what, for sure, and I think that's important for the taxpayer too, as there's at least to come back with something to illustrate why, if that is the case. So if it's the case that it's really 2.5 as opposed to 1.5, well, here's what 1.5 looked like, this is why, or this is what council would be approving to 2.5, and here's the differences why. I think we have to illustrate that, and I think staff has that ability, and where we're at right now, we're in a good spot to at least start that process.
Identify that, yeah.
The only thing I would add is it's a target. And I think it's for us to think, well, it's not a nice to have budget. So if it's a nice to have, we're going to try to look back at the strategic plan and the strategies, but go, okay, is this critical to do this year? Or can it wait? So it'll be a soft number, a target, but it's also going to be, if it's a nice to have, this is maybe not the year because we're trying to figure out what COVID and still deal with infrastructure. So we're not going to, like Sean said, well, debt might be an area, arenas where we cut revenue, but we also cut expenses. Both hopefully come back. I know planning and building, you'll get the year-to-date numbers. They've hit their revenue targets in June and July, and we increased the revenues last year substantially, and they've hit those targets halfway through the year. So it's going to be a bit of a mixed bag, but we just want some direction. Because to be fair, as Sean and I have struggled through this over the last couple of years, we've done that kind of on the fly and brought something to council that we thought you, without asking you what the number was, we kind of guessed at it. And we weren't too far off, but we wanted to formally say that so that all of us are really clear on what kind of the target is and let you decide as you see the information.
Yeah, because I just want the rest of, I understand what you're asking. I just want the rest of council to understand what you're asking as well for that direction. And then with regards to Saturdays, I'm not in favor for Saturdays because as we all know, by that date in November, all of our department heads will probably have reached their 70 hours, so they're putting a Saturday in, or frankly a night in for free. And, you know, a Saturday is a Saturday. They deserve the Saturday and Sundays off. So I'm not in favor of a Saturday. I'm more in favor of a night, but and they can come in late that day, you know, and work. But that's my comment.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just,
I think Councillor Nicholson was first.
yeah, I just wanted.
Okay, ladies first.
I just wanted to clarify that I was not suggesting that staff come in here and work on a Saturday on top of everything else. I was suggesting that they flex a full day and would not have to use anything else. So just so that they're aware of that.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. Councillor Nicholson.
Okay, sorry, I hate to belabor this stuff, but it's important, and after we get to do the budget once a year, and I want to take the time now to have this discussion, so I thank you guys for your, patience. Just reference to Councillor Jackson and the 1.5%. The way I view that is we're basically giving them a planning authority, saying, right, plan for 1.5, come back to the table, but don't plan for 0, which we could say, but you got to give staff something. So 1.5, it's a bit of a what I would call an ass pluck, but it's out there. Okay, so I'm good with it. Councillor Jackson also mentioned earlier just about changes through the year, and I'm not sure what our policy is for that, and I'm not suggesting we create another policy, but as far as I'm concerned, my viewpoint is if we approve a budget and there's changes that our strategic plan changes or the circumstances changes, staff have the responsibility to come back to us and amend the budget. I don't want it written in stone. I want it to be able to be flexible to the circumstances as they change, but within that strategic plan. So I don't want to be rigid and say the budget comes in and never changes. I accept it's going to have to change when the circumstances change. Fair? I don't see any objections. Okay, good. And the last one is just the... Okay. Maybe I'm saying it wrong, but we'll see. We'll go at it again. And for the evening, I trust whatever the treasurer plans. If we can't do it all in one night or split it between 2 different weeks, I'd suggest, meet in the middle ground, start a little bit earlier than we would normally. Yes, it's bad on her, but maybe we front end load at the stuff that she can comment on specifically. And we makes it even worse. Okay. Anyway, I don't think we're going to come to a decision here, but maybe the treasurer and the chair and the CAO can figure this out afterwards and come up with a plan that kind of takes into consideration the comments. Thanks,
Okay, Councillor Jackson.
I think what I meant was if we pass the budget early, which we are, typically, and Councillor Nicholson wouldn't know this, we never pass the budget until mid-May of the year that it was happening. So those changes would come along. The problem with changing your budget during the year, it affects your tax levy, it affects your what you're going to collect from taxes. So my suggestion is, if we're going to continue to change it throughout the first 6 months of the year, then let's not do this process early. Let's do it later. If we're going to only change in the event of an emergency, so you pick one road and you think that's the road that needs to be done first, you know, it's priority number one, and then another road fails, and you say, no, we can't do this road, we're going to do this road because of this emergency, then I'm in favor of that. But you're offsetting, you're not increasing the budget. What I'm saying is there has to be a reason, an emergency reason, why you're changing the budget, the discussions, the roads, the capital projects, and that it shouldn't be changed once it's passed. We can't go back to the taxpayer after we set our tax rates to increase the tax rates. We shouldn't be borrowing. We shouldn't be unfinancing projects unless it's an emergency after those tax rates are set to put on to the next year, because we've done that in the past. We've approved something in this year and said, okay, but we're going to unfinance it this year, we'll deal with it next year in the budget. Well, was it really an emergency? If it is, fine. That's all I'm saying. If it's an emergency, fine. But I believe staff knows the strategic goals and the strategic plan, they take that all into consideration today. And those strategic goals don't change. And the only thing that should change is due to an emergency situation. And I'm not saying a flood. I'm not saying that type of an emergency, but what I am saying is there are certain circumstances where there could be changed. I just don't want it willy-nilly throughout the year to be changed. There was too much of that last year and this year.
Okay, thank you. So, we have the dates wrote down and we've decided on dates. We're good to go. We can move on. We can ask for a vote and we can move on. All in favor of the motion? Carried, thank you. Okay, 6.7. Investing in Canada infrastructure. Recommendation of the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region direct staff to complete a funding application under the Investment in Canada Infrastructure Program, or ICIP, Green Stream Stage 2 for the engineering, design, construction, and process of the compliance components of the Beachburg Water Treatment Plant. Motion and a seconder, please. Reeve Rigier, Councillor Mackay. Thank you. This goes to Steve.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is the second intake of the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Fund. It's a $240 million combined federal-provincial effort, and it's focusing on drinking water systems this time. So staff's focus was on betterment, renewal, rehabilitation of process and compliance components of the Beachburg drinking water system, dated components. The project must be complete by October 31st, 2026. We are focusing on certain areas of the plant that are components that are dated. SCADA, or the PLC, the automation of the plant, the wells, the dug well, the drilled well, rehabilitation, pump replacements, power distribution, new generator, and other electrical components, valves, piping, meters, analyzers, high lift pumps, low lift pumps. So we are proposing a project cost of $2.06 million with a 40% federal, 33.33 provincial, and 26.67 municipal. This is our focus. We're looking for council support on this funding application, and the deadline is September 9th. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Any questions? Councillor Nicholson.
Steve, I support the intent. I just have some finance questions that I don't know. You're probably going to toss these over at...
Perhaps.
If this project does get approved, the initial fund, it has to be started by September 30th, 2022, which means we're laying out funds before that. I'm assuming we'd have to borrow the $500,000, which is our portion, and how does that affect our ARL?
So, I'll take that, Steve. So, the breakdown of the expenses is over the course of 3 years. So it's not that you need $550,000 or $525,000 in that year. So in the event we were successful to get the grant, let's say we find out soon, then or whatever. Likely in year one of that, especially if we don't know going into this budget cycle right now, we'd likely have to fund that year's portion from reserves. And then we know, though, moving into year 2 and year 3, what our proportions are, and I don't have them right in front of me, but we would either have to budget, we have to figure out the source of funding at that time. Is debt financing that what's best? Is funding that through available reserves that we have, or is that funding through the tax levy? We have to decide that at that time. But it's not that you need the $550,000 in that 1 year. Or 520, I'm not sure.
And if I could add one point, these are all, to your point, these are all life cycle asset replacement things. These are not like, hey, we're adding a tower in Beachburg. It's like fixing stuff that needs to be fixed that probably should have been fixed before. So I think you got to figure that out when you look. So what the treasurer would do would come back with a report and figure out how to fund it, what source of funding. I'm hopeful to go in the future when we're replacing, when we're just life cycling stuff, we're not boring for basic life cycle items. But these are just, it's all life cycle type initiatives mostly in here. It's not like we're adding a new water tank that would be development charges funded. So the treasurer would do that work in terms of the best source of funding. But I just want to know, when we were talking about life cycle, a lot of this stuff is kind of basic life cycle items that Aqua has pointed out and that Steve is keeping an eye on and ensuring that it gets done. If we don't get that grant money, we're probably going to be picking off some of these items because they have to be done to ensure the water is safe and the plant is working as it should.
The suggestion I'd make, and I'm tracking exactly what you're saying, is that when we make the commitment to apply for this project, and should we be selected, which fingers crossed, is that we should almost in our mind already have earmarked that, right? There's a certain proportion of our borrowing or our reserve that is set aside by virtue of the decision we make tonight. And I don't mean set aside, I'm not talking accounting, but we can't make these kinds of applications without acknowledging the financial implication. If it comes in and back to the table and saying we've got it, and oh, now we're going to budget it. No. De facto tonight, we're saying we're prepared to spend $500,000 on the water system. We don't know how we're going to spend it, but we're going to spend $500,000.
Well, I would agree that I think that's one way to look at it for sure. I think another way possibly to look at it is that we're making that commitment, but we're getting the commitment from upper levels of government to cover 75% of that. And if we leave 75% of that on the table, I mean, the reality is if we are successful in getting that, we have time by virtue of it being a multi-year project to find our sources of funding. But in essence, by supporting the application, council would be supporting, if we were successful, by virtue of that, I guess, to support those funds, to support those projects.
If I can add, the project is a multi-year project, and next year would be more of the EA and the actual engineering of it. Then following in 2022 would actually be the construction of the actual project. So and Steve has filled the application out and provided in each year what funds are required. So it is broken down for each project per year and also by task.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I'm tracking it. I'm in full support. I'm prepared to spend the money. I think it needs to be done, so it's just, I just don't want to lose track of it. But thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jackson?
I think to be fair as well is, as Councillor Olmsted said earlier with the ARL, is that we're only halfway. We've got room to fund 550,000, more than that, each year. We've also, there is also an area that until you get approval, you don't spend any money, because until you get the approval, you're not, that, whatever you spend is on your dime. So they're not suggesting that we approve this project today. We're suggesting that we approve the grant application today, but it's another story if the grant application doesn't go through. We're not suggesting as well that we go ahead with this project full bore. That sounds like they would come back and pick and choose each individual aspect of that project, if not approved, what needs to be done today or next year, whatever, and move forward. But we can't spend any money until it's approved. Once it's approved, then we're getting that 73% funding back every time we make a claim, each time that claim goes through. So it's not at the end of the project, it's all the way through. And there is more than enough money available to borrow 550,000 over a number of years. So I think that's important to note, but I agree with you, we do have to keep that in mind. We're not going to spend the whole ARL in 1 year. At least I hope we aren't, unless something drastic happens. But I have worked for municipalities where they pretty much blew their ARL. But again, it was because there was funding available from the federal and the provincial governments. And if you didn't take advantage of that at the time, you'd never be able to do those projects, and they were major projects. And it was only for a certain number of years that your ARL was drastically reduced. So they knew they couldn't borrow anything else. They couldn't do a rink or whatever. So yes, you have to be cognizant that that's sitting there, but we're not approving the project, we're approving the grant application at this time.
Okay, Councillor McKay.
Yeah, I just want to know if you put all this stuff in refit, in 5 years you put a tank, will all this stuff work? Okay, say you put all new equipment in, and now we have to put a water tank in. We have to take all the equipment out and put something else in?
You talking a water tank for capacity storage?
Yeah, like a water tower.
A tower?
Yeah, so they're talking about that in the future. So will everything link up is what I'm saying? Because how many times have you seen that and then they had to tear it all out?
No, water tower has nothing to do with these components at all.
All right.
No.
Okay, never mind that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Now we move on to 6.8, leaf and yard waste. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region receive this report for information purposes as it relates to the outcome of the special leaf and yard waste curbside collection pilot project. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor McKay and Councillor Jackson. Let's go to Steve, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, we did have a pilot project leaf and yard waste curbside collection event. It occurred in May, in the spring. As expected, it was more utilized in urban areas than rural areas. We didn't know what we were going to collect. We put it together pretty quickly, but it was utilized. We had some good advertising. We didn't know how many hours it was going to take. Thank you. We didn't know how many hours it was going to take the contractor. We didn't know how many stops. Now we do. And if and when we have another one in the fall, it will be much more utilized. I think that goes without saying. So we have the costs here. It was an $8,700 project in terms of the curbside collector, and then some. Oh, sorry. Thank you. And of course, then there was advertising costs as well. So this is just to provide an update on how it went and how it was utilized. And as I said, I suggest if there's one in the fall, it will be much more utilized. And I'll pass it back to the mayor for questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Councilor McLaughlin?
So if we went ahead and decided to do the fall cleanup as well, then it would be close to $20,000, correct? Give or take.
I would suggest it.
19,000?
I would suggest it'll come in 9,000 to 15, 16,000. It could be as high as.
Whole year together, Steve.
Pardon me?
I'm putting the whole year together. The one already costs 9,000,
Oh, okay. Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we do another one, I'm saying the cost may be the same, just $20,000. Where are you
Perhaps.
budgeting this $10,000 from? I know the last one came from the COVID update or COVID funding. Is that correct, Rob?
No, this is one of the willy-nilly additions, was whether we were doing this or not. It,
Okay, I don't know.
but I'm using those terms loosely. Basically, it was to see what it would cost, to see if it was within budget, and if it was worth our while for the 2022 budget. So when you authorize the pilot, you authorize both the spring and the fall. So should you not want to proceed with the fall, you would need to move a motion accordingly. So just to be very clear on that. So the original motion was to proceed with the pilot, which was spring and fall.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was on.
The one thing I'll point out is landfill tipping fees are healthy, and we cut them thinking that COVID would be a problem and that people wouldn't be going to the landfill. They're very healthy. So the treasurer will look at, we're not concerned in covering these costs. We think that we can cover them within the existing budget. That being said, it is a pilot, so it's hard to, it's to test to see if this is a program that is viable into the future. And spring, I think, is based on the short time frame we had, was rather successful. And we think with giving people more than a month's notice and building on the spring, we'd get a better understanding of whether this is a viable service going into the future. And that would be included as a discussion for the 2022 budget.
Councillor Mackay?
Steve, if you did once a year in the spring, if you leave the yard waste all winter, it'll rot down.
Absolutely.
You have less to pick up in the spring, so you make one once a year. That's an option? Or?
I would suggest people will want a fall collection more than a spring collection. That's just my opinion.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholson?
So my thoughts on this, I was very surprised to see the, I shouldn't say I was surprised, but I didn't expect the urban uptake of the program. So when I see like 225 urban households, I'm assuming, between Cobden and Beachburg, that's pretty good uptake for an urban center. I had expected the rural centers to be low, and it's unfortunate we have to pay them to drive by a bunch of places they're not even stopping at. I just wonder, basically 250 households took advantage of this, and what do we have, CAO, how many households? 3,000, 3,500?
My recollection is 3,500, unless the planner has the number in front of him, 3,500. But that's like, and the question is vacant properties, seasonal properties,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
So even if we were conservative and said 2,500, so 10% of the people took care of it. Steve, if you're projecting essentially triple the uptake for a fall event, based on what Miller has told you, we could have 750 households. So basically, we're picking up 1,000 people out of 2,500 households. I can, from a rural perspective, I find it hard pill to swallow because just throw it in the back 40. But from an urban perspective, I see some value in it, and I would be supportive of continuing it as a pilot. I wouldn't suggest putting it in the budget until we can see the budget as a whole, but maybe it's one of those items that could be a, if we had more money, this is what we do thing. But that's my input. Thanks, Steve, for that research.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson?
I think that there was a huge amount of complaining that went on in the spring because we did do it later. We had an early spring basically, and a lot of people had already cleaned up their yard and brought it to the landfill or put it in the back 40, whatever. But I think that was a huge complaint at the time. I think the numbers probably would have been a lot higher had they known to hold on to it a little longer. But that's the risk you take when you set a date in the spring. You're not aware. If you set it too late in the fall, you could get snow. We have no control over the weather, but I think as far as 200, and I don't know where you got the number from, but in any event, that to me is a low number, and I think that there is a reason why it was a low number, because I remember seeing or hearing a lot of complaining to say that people had already done their cleanup. Am I incorrect in saying that? And yeah, as Rigger says, we only had 2 weeks to notify them, and it was a push, and it certainly was well received by those who were able to receive the service. But again, I think if we advertise it ahead of time and pick a date, then people are aware of it when to start raking their leaves and whatnot, but like we just don't know. So I think it's going to be much higher at the high end rather than at the low end in the fall.
Okay, thank you. My comment on this is I would like to see the fall pickup go ahead with notice. We'll have more notice this time. It will give us a better idea of the figures and how to proceed, or if we proceed with this again. So if we did discuss last time was to have a pilot project spring and fall, and let's go ahead and let's do it and see what the numbers are in the fall and average it out and go from there. Councillor Olmsted.
Yeah, I agree. I think I like the idea of the project. I think it's progressive. Our township's growing and changing, and I think we need to do it more than one time to get a real good sample size of what's going on. So I'd like to see it go ahead for next year as well, to get a real good base of what's happening.
I agree. Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor McLaughlin.
I wonder if we went ahead with this, could we possibly get the report before we started to look at the budget? So this year it could be a budget item rather than just picked out of reserves from somewhere. I would like to see the report. If you want to go ahead with it, that's fine. Let's do it. But let's get the report back so that we will have the information before we start to do any budget deliberations, if that's possible.
So that would go to Lane then? How long, what's their turnaround time? A month from when they report, Millers?
Usually the week of, providing reports to us. And we're thinking as staff, we're thinking October. It is difficult having one date versus I know a lot of neighboring municipalities have two or three. So we do have to pick that one date, which is tricky. Like as Councillor Jackson stated, that too early, it may not have leaves in the ground, too late, it might snow. So we're picking a date that is hopefully mid-October. We are talking to our contractor. So, and big thing to go ahead with it is to get out and notify the public.
Okay, sounds good. So it is feasible to come up with a date?
Correct, yes.
Maybe we could discuss that next council meeting?
I think we'll just, once we hear the dates, we'll circulate and let council know, but there'll be flyers and we'll get it out.
So the dates will be based on when Millers give approval of when they're available?
Yes, so mid to late October, I think, is what Steve and Lane are looking at, and they'll confirm that week based on, they're doing 3 pickups and large item pickups and 3 other municipalities, so it's trying to fit that in. So, but Lane's point, before the snow and some leaves on the ground.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, call for vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now we move on to 6.9. Pedestrian crossover update. Recommendation of the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region receive this report for information purposes as it pertains to the installation of pedestrian crossovers at 4 locations. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor McLaughlin and Councillor Olmsted. Thank you. This goes to Lane.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'll be quick with this one. If you recall it back a few months ago, we brought a report to council based on the 4 crossings. 3 are near schools and 1, so they're all near schools. In Beachburg, Cobden, 2 in Cobden and 1 in Westmeath. Following that meeting, staff have been gearing up and purchase all the poles and all the flashing beacons and order locates. When we applied for the occupancy to go ahead with the county Renfrew, it was provided to us that we had to get county council permission. So the meeting has to go to their operations committee and council meeting, which is happening in September. So that is putting us behind schedule as we wanted these in before the school year started. So staff are recommending having 2 months with the crossing guards come in, and that actually will allow some overlap with the actual PXO, and they can teach the children how to use it, and drivers also how to use the actual flashing beacons. Yeah, so this report is just an update that we will have crossing guards for the next 2 months. And that's it. Back to yourself.
Questions, Councillor Jackson?
Was this not approved at budget in the fall, like a year ago, to install these? When was this approved by council to install these?
So they were, yeah, it was approved part of the budget.
So I guess my question is why is it so late? Why wasn't it done? Because my understanding as well is we also budgeted not to have crossing guards in the fall, and now we're delayed, and because of whatever, I don't know why we're delayed. I'd kind of like to know why we're delayed, and it's costing us money now.
Yeah, I can do that. So staff has, like, through the whole year, had an aggressive projects this year, and the budget was also included. If I'm wrong, Mayor Treasurer, that the crossing guards were included in the 2021 budget, and then this was brought forward and to install was part of the school year, and it wasn't done. And when we went ahead and go actually install them and get the county permit, they provided that it had to be sent to their committee and council, which staff wasn't aware of.
If I can just add on the cost, okay, you were going to go there. I would just say that we got approval that it met the warrants without an understanding that it required a formal approval. So they basically said they meet the warrants, you're good to go. And the procurement came to council for the single source on the beacon came in July. So we thought we had enough time, but then add in the additional kind of formalization of the approval to put it on, and that slowed down. But Shawkins, we did that because of lockdowns. The money we did budget for the first half of the year for crossing guards we're actually below budget. So we'll, even by extending 2 crossing guards into October, we'll likely be below budget because they were laid off for most of the first half because of the COVID lockdowns in schools and learning from home.
And I guess my other comment is there was quite a drastic Facebook thing again with regards to our crossing guards no longer being crossing guards, and that I don't know if it was a repeat that I was seeing or when it actually occurred. I just remember seeing it not long ago, when they were made aware that there was no crossing guards. People love Facebook, I tell you. I'm soon going to get off it.
If we all ran on Facebook, we'd never get any work done.
And I think the crossing guards, and Carmen can correct me if I'm wrong, were notified after the last lockdown that they weren't going to be called back. So they were aware, and I'm trying to remember what COVID's been was that like March after? They didn't come back after March break, I believe. And they were given a record of employment back in March. So, the ones that Carmen has contacted to come back, I think, have a sense of duty and were nice about it. But the crossing guards themselves were notified when they were laid off last time and received a record of employment. So it shouldn't be a surprise to the crossing guards that we were installing these. And what I've said to a parent in Cobden is to say we're adding these in 2 locations that don't even have crossing guards and don't even have crossovers. So, and in Cobden we're putting in 2. So we do not require the county's approval on Cowley. So my understanding from Lane is that will go forward when as soon as possible once we confirm with the school where they want to put it. But yes, the crossing guards were notified and received a record of employment after the last shutdown of schools. I think that was March.
And we've got locates and all of that ready to go?
They were ordered, and we were going to go ahead with it. And not to make excuses for staff, but so staff are putting these in ourselves, and with help with some contractors. I know typically a lot with municipalities going out and actually doing the whole job hired out is typically about 25 to 30,000 per one. So by doing this in-house, we're saving quite a bit of money and actually getting all of them done for almost the same money that it would cost to do 1 or 2.
Right, but that's what we budgeted for, right?
Yes.
There's no savings. Like, that's what we budgeted for. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
I'm all about cutting the red tape. So I don't understand why county can't authorize a warrant and a permit at the same time unless there's some new information that we need to present. Maybe this is a way for us to go back to county and say, let's just relook at your process. If we ask you to count the number of cars that go by this point so that we can put a traffic light in and you tell us we can, do we need to go back and ask you if we can do it then? That's frustrating. And that's delaying us. So that's one. I'd like to encourage that we just kind of take this as an opportunity to maybe explore if there's red tape that could be removed. The second thing is that I would encourage that the priority for putting these in, if we do have crossing guards here in Cobden in place, and budget or no budget, I'm fine with, let's work on the other 2 locations first, subject to the non-county road one, but let's get those areas covered first for those kids, knowing that we have support here in place for the kids that are here. That would just be my recommendation.
If I can speak in fairness to the county, I think we were late to confirm that, and maybe they didn't make it clear. And I'll take a mea culpa here, is we presented a really aggressive capital program, and I'm not making excuses for staff, but I just want us to keep in mind that we should also, and I've been told to slow down and I get it, but we should also be cognizant that when we approve capital projects that we can get them done in a timely fashion. And like 3 major road programs, a number of other studies and programs, it's a lot, and we should keep that in mind. But I don't want us to blame the county. I think if this was initiated under Janet, we thought that meant we could put them. It was just, it met the warrants. So the good part is it will improve pedestrian safety in terms of our active transportation plan and 4 key intersections and help all 3 schools. It's a little messy, but we'll get it done.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jackson?
I guess my suggestion would be maybe for the county, it is their road. They do have the approval authority on their roads, and that's very important. But perhaps we could suggest to them that if we're asking if it warrants that there be put sidewalks, or not sidewalks, but signal lights for pedestrians, that they outline the avenue in which you ask permission and how many days you need it ahead of time, and like what is the process to ask permission to get that approval to install it. If they would have said, okay, yes, it warrants it, we agree that it should go on these roads or the county roads. In order to get county's permission, you should put it, your request for approval 6 months before your construction, 3 months before construction, 2 months, whatever it is, that you put that approval process in the letter upon return. That's all I would suggest to the county. I think they have just as much right to control their roads as we have to control ours. We wouldn't want somebody doing something with our property either, so, but it would be nice to know the process if they're replying to a letter. That's all I would suggest.
Okay, thank you.
And if I could, I'll just go to the timeline then. So the month of July, the county, we do not meet. So there is no committee, there is no county in July, unlike Whitewater where we might have the odd meeting. There is none. So it will come back to committee the second week of September to operations, and it will come back to county council the end of the month. So that's the timeline, and it won't happen. I can guarantee you, I know how the county operates right now, or how it goes, and it will not be prior to that. Just saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mackay.
This question for Lane. Are we going to be putting up standards or posts, or is that on our property or is that on county property?
It'll be on county property.
Okay, so it's in their road allowance or?
That's correct.
Okay, I thought if it wasn't, we could just put them in and wait. Okay, good enough. Thanks.
Thank you. Sean, did you have something?
Yeah, just a lot of talk about budget, so just to clarify on the budget, so we in 2021, we budgeted essentially half of what we budgeted for in 2020 because we anticipated half the year. We've used half of that, so we've used a quarter of the funds we had in 2020. We have enough funds in the budget to cover the cutoff year, or the cover off year. So.
And that's to cover crossing guards for the 2 months. Is that what you're saying?
We have enough. I do not anticipate we will go over the budget amount we have.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Seeing nothing, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Break time, 10 minutes. welcome back. Moving on to 6.10, road assumption. Recommend the council approve the acceptance, assumption, dedication as public highway naming of the lands described as Part 2 of Plan 49R-20. Motion and a seconder, please. Gear and Kai. This goes to Ivan, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. So this report speaks to the road assumption along Faught Road. It dates back to 1989 when a lot creation or approved. As a condition of approval, there was a strip of land that was to be transferred to the township for widening purposes. Road widening allows the township to take over some land for the purposes of potentially widening the road or adding ditches in the future. So as part of the sale of this piece of land, there's lawyers determined that it was inaccessible because of this strip of land, and as a result, we proposed to transfer to the township. So staff are supportive of this, and essentially a formality to get things cleaned up. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. Comments? So Nicholson? Pardon? Did we not do that? We did it.
Yeah.
Reven, Mackay, yeah. Sorry.
Good. This road is inconsequential in the figure, but I just want to make sure every time I hear the assumption of a road, I question whether we have the funding to support the roads that we already have. And I just want to make sure, and this is for anybody out there contemplating approaching us to a road, we have to take a look at that from a budget perspective. It's unfeasible. Circumstance, I completely understand it, but road assumption is by exception, rare exception only, as far as I'm concerned. So that's just my input.
Thank you. Anything else? Seeing none, ask for a vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now we move on to 6.1, road assumption, Old Mill Bridge. Recommendation that the council approve the acceptance, assumption, dedication as highway and naming the lands described as Part 4 of 49R-19831. Motion seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Councillor Jackson. Thank you. Ivan?
Yeah, thank you. So this severance application is more recent. It was approved, it was filed on June 4th and approved by the Committee of Adjustment for the Township subsequently after that date. One of the conditions was to determine if there's any road widening requirements. It was as part of the surveying that the asphalt portion of section of Old Mill Bridge Road and Hila Road projects onto the property. So as a result, the surveyor has surveyed a triangle that's by 6 meters, and that small area would be transferred to the township purposes to be assumed and dedicated as public highway. So a very small portion of land, but contains our road over it. So this would fulfill their condition of severance and progress that severance file forward. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Seeing none, call for a vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now we move on to 6.12, Wren. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region support the granting of a one-year extension to the draft plan of subdivision and conditions of draft approval for Wren subdivision, bracket, county file 47T93005, bracket. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Jackson and Councillor McLaughlin. Ivan, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. So council should be generally familiar with these extensions, draft plan subdivision and conditions of draft approval. Essentially, 2 times now I've been to council in 2019 and 2020 to extend it by 1 year. Essentially what it presents is that there's sort of 2 phases in the approval of a subdivision. One is approval, and then the second one is plan a subdivision. At this stage, Wren subdivision approval for phase 2, but these lands represent the full buildable land of the entire lot. So they're draft approved, and this would an extension of 1 year to those draft conditions, very similar to what we did last year, and it's sent to the county for final approval from the county. And that's essentially it. Thanks.
Will county adopt these as in a timely manner, or is this going to be does this have to wait? Do we have to wait on?
Well, essentially what happens is we support the granting of the 1 year we would send a letter to the county advising them that council supports it. And this needs to be for October, so I think we're well in advance of our deadline.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Seeing none, call for vote. All in favor? Carried, thank you. 6.13, Bennett Meadows Subdivision. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve in principle the installation of the sanitary sewer to service those lands described as Bennett Meadows Subdivision over municipally held lands described as part of Lot 6, Roskin 1. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Olmsted, Councillor McLaughlin. You, Ivan?
Thank you. So the township's been working with Bonashire Excavate through Matt Naismith, the project manager. So as BEI proposes, they're proposing a development on that'd be the south side, which would essentially be the extension of John Street. They're describing that as the Bennett's subdivision. So they've engaged the services of JL, an engineering and planning firm out of Ottawa, and JL Richards has determined that in order to service the land shown on attachment 1, which is essentially 14 blocks intended for row houses. Based on the existing elevations of those properties, it would prove to be difficult to direct the sewage from those units and subsequent beyond this phase to Astrolab Road. So currently in Astrolab there is a sanitary sewer line that runs there, but in order to connect to that sanitary sewer line, they would have to import a lot of fill in this area to raise the land level so that they can get the proper grades to connect to that sanitary sewer. So as a result of that difficulty, they've proposed an alignment or a new sanitary sewer that would go in that would be the easterly direction, project across 3 private properties, one held by the municipality, one by the Cobden Agricultural Society, and one privately held by an individual property owner. This proposed alignment of the sanitary sewer, or the new sanitary sewer, it hasn't been fully engineered, like fully detailed design at this stage, but they are looking for concurrence or acceptability by the township in principle that we would allow sanitary sewer to run in that direction. It is anticipated this sanitary sewer line would service not only these lands, but also lands on the end of the rail line and other lands to the south. So this would be one of the main trunks for the developability of that area, and would likely negate the need for a pump station. So pump stations are extremely expensive, not only for the developer, for the township in the future to maintain and make repairs and all that. BEI has received the acceptance from the private property owner. I understand they're in the final stages of getting the acceptance from the Cobden Agricultural Society to traverse their lands, and what we're seeking from council now is the approval in principle. I mean, they're going to have to go through engineering design. That'll be reviewed by staff to traverse our property. One main thing is that if you look at attachment 3, I believe it is, there was a concept plan for the parklands, and the proposed alignment would be of the sanitary sewer would go underneath a parking area, which would be asphalted. So if any repairs would be required to the sanitary line, it could prove to be costly to dig up the asphalt and such if ever we had to repair it in the medium to long-term future. So we are proposing potentially maybe just realigning that, making it a bit more straight towards the park road, or what would be a future road. So that's just the one thing, and BI is willing to work with us to change that alignment as well. So staff are supportive of this, and it would progress the file forward. Thanks.
Property that's on the township, is that our proposed walking trail? Is that?
The walking trail is actually at the end of this phase. You see on attachment 1, there's a cul-de-sac. There's a strip of land that connects the rail line to the new 14 acres of township received from BEI. So that's the strip of land that would connect.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else with questions? Councillor Jackson?
Is there any questions with regards to the settlement area? I know that was a huge thing when we did our plan, and they talked about not allowing development outside of the settlement area, and this is outside of the settlement area?
So yeah, so that's been an ongoing discussion with the township and BI. As part of the transfer of the parklands, the township did commit to do a study, which we did, growth study, which demonstrated we needed more lands or were prepared to change areas of land in this area. We've been sort of reaching out with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing relating to OPA 11. So OPA would have an urban area expansion, and they haven't finalized their decision around that yet. So we don't want to do OPAs in limbo. So we're trying to get OPA 11 finalized out of the way so that we, the township, could file with the county, because they are now the approval authority for OP plan amendments, to include all of these lands in the boundary. I will note that all except for the last 2 blocks are part of the village currently. So there's only the cul-de-sac and the last 2 blocks that would need to be added for the purposes of this development. So we anticipate about 3 to 4 months approval for an OPA. Should we just go ahead and apply? And I think might take that direction and just have both OPAs running. But we're discussing timelines with them, and we should be able to meet their timelines to deal with that.
Yeah, thank you. I just don't want anybody complaining that we're holding up the process at all, or that there's something that they're not aware of. And another discussion that happened when they developed elsewhere is they are fully aware that they're paying for all the services up front.
That's correct, yeah. So as part of development of subdivision, it's the developer's responsibility to construct all roads, curbs, and grading, and sanitary sewers, all services relating to that subdivision.
Yes. Now, do we also have a process to enter into a subdivision agreement with them and kind of
So what's happened here is essentially similar to the Wren one, where we approve that, we provide draft approval. So BI has filed a plan of subdivision application to the county, and that was done, I think it's noted here, back in May. There was some missing items, about 12 items that were outstanding. So JL Richards and BEI are working to get those 12 items fulfilled. One of those items is in fact the basis of this report. Servicing generally does not commence, even in a pre-servicing agreement, until draft approval is provided. However, BEI may choose to solicit council to get pre-servicing agreements in place, but we'll see how that plays out this fall. But again, on the timeline we're at, draft approval generally takes probably 6 to 8 months to a year. We'll see how the timeline plays out. But in no way, shape, or form is the township sort of delaying the approval of this development.
I didn't think so. I just wanted to make sure that there was no other issues in the background that may, and if they're not aware of them, then we need to make them aware of them so that they know. But yeah, good. I'm in concurrence. Good, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
And Mr. Mayor, if I could just add, I just want to say that staff, not me, Ivan and Lane, meet with BI on a weekly basis on this and their other developments. So I think staff, kudos to the managers, have been constantly in communication with BI, which I think is very helpful.
Okay, thank you. Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you. Maybe are we going across the pavement? Is it going across the agricultural? Is that in front of the agricultural hall, or is it back behind?
The proposed alignment would occur. It's behind. If you allow me just 1 second here. It's the sanitary sewer would be one underground. There'd be no road there, so it would be re-landscaped and brought back to its original location. And it's behind the farmers market, behind the rink.
Okay, yeah, it's not in the front parking lot.
No.
Okay, that's where, because I was trying to look at the picture and I couldn't kind of get it in my head.
Yeah.
Where the picture is. But yeah, there's a strip of land. There's a road allowance, or a road that we go in and out. You can go in and out, and it take, as long as it's not going across the pavement, I have no problems.
That's correct. It'd be in the back end of the baseball field and between the arena and the Common Agricultural Society building.
Yeah, as long as it's not, we're not breaking up any asphalt. That's all.
Yep.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Nicholson?
Just the capacity for that pipeline. It said it may service all development that BEI may have that extends beyond the current proposed plan of subdivision?
Yeah, so when you're proposing to install a pipe of this nature, you want to make sure that it can service as many homes as possible. again, it's hard to estimate at this point in time how many homes could be built sort of in that area based on lot size and the like. I guess one of the, so ultimately it's hard to estimate at this point in time. As part of their engineering, functional servicing design, they are going to estimate how many homes. I think it's in the range of 300 homes. So at this point, that's probably the number I could provide at this stage.
Good. On the map, and it's attachment number 1, the first map,
Yep.
it at point A, it has a dotted blue line that extends directly out along that roadway. Is that servicing a different group of different development?
So A is kind of where Astrolab meets the proposed, so there's a manhole in Astrolab, and that's where it would connect to. So A is likely the future location of a road.
Yeah.
So you see beyond A, there's a dotted line that continues.
Yeah.
That would likely service any future development in that area as well.
And sorry, I'm just making sure I understand. When they get the permission from us to install this pipe, it has this capacity to service all these projected homes. At the point of the time the subdivision is done, it transfers to us.
That's correct. So once they have approval to commence construction, they construct the said pipe, and then we complete preliminary acceptance, which means that the pipe's constructed according to the design. And then they continue to own the pipe for 1 year for a warranty, and then we come to council. We have to come to council to assume the said services.
Yeah. Therefore, the need for it not to be under our own parking lot where we'd have to pay ourselves to rip up our parking lot to fix it after that 1 year of warranty.
That's correct. And maybe to add to the point of you were speaking of life cycle cost, one of the requirements of the PPS is for the developer to determine life cycle costs of the infrastructure. So as part of the planning rationale, they will have to speak to the life cycle costs and the cost to replace that pipe in the future as well.
Perfect. Last question. Sorry, Ivan.
Yep.
If this contractor was putting in this pipe, it had a capability of servicing 300 residential properties. We saw a need in the future for 600 because of another future development. Could you come into some agreement where you would pay to put the pipe in once to service both? Maybe it would be a future cost we'd accept that.
Yeah, so in this case, that is, entirely we could do that, and that would generally be paid through development charges. So any oversizing could be paid through development charges. In this case, the lands beyond this property are all held by BEI, so it's in their best interest to ensure that they could service their lands. Beyond that, I don't anticipate that this pipe would service any other lands privately held. So I don't anticipate us, the township, needing to increase the size of it. So I think the size that they're going to propose is going to be adequate to service their lands.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
I just have one question. Is there anything else going in this hole or just the sewer line? Do we know?
It's only the sewer line at this point in time that's been presented to us. So the water would project through Astrolab, from Astrolab, if you will, into this phase of the development. We're in very, very preliminary stages. So stormwater, so that's water that lands on the ground and in the road, is projected to be sent through some conveyance measure, whether it's underground, through a ditch, to the southern end of the property and then connect to a sort of ravine / tributary that goes into Muskrat Lake. So that's just give you a sense of where those servicing will end up.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, ask for a vote. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Now we move on to 6.14, Business Restart Retention and Expansion. Recommendation of the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve a contract business outreach coordinator position for a 12-month contract to complete a business restart retention and expansion program. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Jackson, Rebrigier, thank you. This goes back to Ivan.
Yeah, thank you so much. So the township has been finally successful in obtaining a RED grant, Rural Economic Development Grant. We've applied since I've arrived here. This is the third time, essentially for this same project, to prepare what's called a business retention and expansion program. In our last submission, we added the term restart as a result of the COVID-19 and the difficulties some of our businesses have been having. One of the key things here is that they don't necessarily fund consulting firms. So one of the key things is we have to hire somebody for the position. That would be they'd be working out of our office, and they would prepare essentially or run through the program, it's called, the BRNE. It's noted in my report there's 4 phases to the program, and they'd be reaching out to local businesses, whether it's in the agricultural, industrial, or commercial and tourism, different industries. So we were approved for funding for 50% of the cost for the said employee, representing just shy of $25,000. Township did note a in-kind contribution of $15,000. That would be space, equipment, and staff support, office space. The proposed project would extend, as noted in our application, over 9 months. However, to secure an employee, staff are proposing that to facilitate that, to add an additional, would it be 3 months, I guess, to bring it up to 12 months. So for instead of rather than a 9-month contract, we'd go for a 12-month contract. So total cost of that for the township. So total cost for that position is estimated to be just over $71,000, of which $24,000 would be covered, $25,000 would be covered by the province, and total cost of the township would be $46,000. Staff essentially recommend to council that we proceed with the posting of that position for a period of 12 months, and the cost relating to that would be distributed hopefully to secure the position in October, and would be distributed in this year and into next year as well. Thanks.
Questions? Councillor Jackson.
Just wondering, how much have we been approved for? Exactly. Sorry, I can't seem to find it.
So under the analysis portion, there's the paragraph. So we were eligible for funding representing $24,958.50. So that was the amount. That was 50% of what we had indicated in the application form. We had estimated $50,000, just shy of $50,000 for 9 months, and we got eligible funding for 50% of that.
Okay, so we were approved for 9 months, or we applied for 9 months, and now we're asking for 12?
We were approved for 9 months, and we had originally estimated the cost over 9 months. That's correct.
Was there a reason why we only applied for 9 months and now we're asking for 12?
Well, the reason why is because the program likely would only take 9 months to complete. However, staff feel that if we could add the additional 3 months, we might have an easier time in securing a candidate for the position. And we would also use those additional months for implementation and provide a transition period from that contract position back to the community services, and also assist with the 2023 budget deliberation. So if there's any other little projects that we can get them working on, we try to strive for them to get those done as well.
Did we apply at all for the Main Street? I'm trying to think of what it's called, but it's basically to help with bringing people online, like businesses online. Did we apply for those grants?
We did not apply. I was aware of that program through our consultations or discussions with adjacent municipalities, the Killaloe, Haggerty, Richards, and the like, Bourne-Shire Valley, but we did not apply for that.
Okay. Pardon?
I was just going to say, we applied for a bunch of grants and then got them. So now it's like, oh my God.
I know.
I just filled an interim report. So we kind of picked our spots on this one, and we got some good feedback after not getting it twice. The trick, I think, on these is you do a plan, you don't want it to just sit there. And so and we've had an outreach. I wasn't here and a lot of us weren't, but we had somebody do outreach to businesses. I don't think there's a lot that came out of it.
No.
So what we're hoping with this is, if we're going to do it, that it results in some concrete follow-up, so that when the contract position goes, and I confirmed, like when the contract is done, they're done, but that existing staff can make sure this thing continues, and that if we're building a BR&E program, that we can sustain it. We think we have a better chance of getting somebody for 12 months than 9, but also just the piece, not just doing a study for the sake of it. We know that our businesses need support, and we want to bring it businesses, so that's why we've applied for this 3 times. But the difficulty with applying for grants, sometimes you get them,
Sometimes you get
you have to do the work.
It's Digital Street, yes. And if you want information on it, because it's great, Katie at LV has done awesome work. We've had a contact person. Anyways, worthwhile, because it does go out and contact the businesses as well. I'm not saying this program as well we've also done, and it is a good program as well, but the Main Street seems to be now taking off. And I know we just got approval there again. I'm not sure if it's open again or as you apply, but Katie's there for only another week and a bit. So if you pull your best to get her, but because she's going on maternity leave. So we had hired, she's full, but we had hired a contract person in to do it. So anyways, she would be a great person to follow up on that if you're interested, but I know, and then you've got to look after it, and it just causes work. Grants cause work. The 3rd? The 9th, yeah, last week, next week. Yeah. I'm pretty sure. Oh, God, I hope not.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nicholson? I think this is excellent, and I'm in full support of extending it the extra 3 months. And I agree, we can't just make a plan that sits on the shelf or raise expectations of our small business owners that we can't sustain. So strategically, when we hire them, when we set our objectives, I think we really have to look at how do we create, or how do we, the value that we gain from these 12 months, how do they sustain beyond that? I mean, Ivan can't pick up a bunch more duties after this person leaves. So the person has to be, 12 months should give them enough time to do that and then come up with an effective transition plan. Some of the things that are coming up that small businesses, the opportunities that exist right now for small businesses are tremendous. I just provided Ivan a study that was done on post-pandemic small business labor markets. We're not participating in that because we don't have any resources. Maybe the BR&E guy can do that. We've got a new small business property class rate that's going to be considered at county for implementation, where we can give discounts to our small businesses. Maybe the BR&E guy can involve that and make sure our businesses are represented in that. So I think the timing is perfect for us to want to hire someone like this. I just want to make sure that when they leave after 12 months, it's not a vacuum. We figured out a way to sustain that support somehow. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mackay.
Okay, you get 25,000. Where's the 46,000? What's that for? I know nobody's going to live here on 25,000, but
So the total cost we had included in the application was $50,000.
Yep.
That was essentially the salary and additional cost over 9 months. But if we were to extend that based on a review of positions that was done more recently, and based on the grid position for this position, the total cost would be about $71,000 for the salaries for that position over the full year, 12 months. And we get $25,000 from that, from the province.
Yep.
So total cost of the township is $46,000.
okay.
That's where I'm getting $46,000.
I'd like to mention that lately we've been hiring very tall people. I'd like to get some shorter people on the council, on our job list,
All right. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, call for a vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. 6.15, site plan control approval. 1097 Zion Line, that the Council of Township of Whitewater Region approve entering into a site plan agreement with Benjamin and Judith Schneider related to a telecommunications tower. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Mackay, Councillor Jackson. Thank you. This goes back to Ivan.
Yeah, thanks so much. So this application was submitted by Rogers Communications Incorporate. His fellow gentleman's name is Eric Bellchamber, and he's filing on behalf of the owners. A couple things. Council will remember that in May we passed a site plan control bylaw, an amendment to the bylaw, and that was as a result of the removal of membership to CRINS. CRINS is a communication agency to which normally these applications would go to. But we've decided that, as council decided, that we would review communication towers through site plan control approval. The one key thing to note here is that the consultation piece with respect to these towers continues to occur through the Industry Canada protocol. So the proponent, being Rogers Communications, They are in the process of consulting with the adjacent property owners, and the whole process is outlined in a protocol from Industry Canada. So the proposal here is for the construction of a new tower. It'll be used for the purposes of cell phone communications as well as wireless internet. The property in question is 1097 Zion Line, and the structure would be 300 feet tall. So 300 feet tall, the requirement for public notification is 3 times the height of the tower. So they've circulated a notice to the property owners within 3 times the height of 300 feet, so 900 feet. And they've also advertised in the local newspaper. Newspaper ad went out on August 12th, and the public notice went out on August 9th, and proponents have until September 12th to submit their comments directly back to Eric from Rogers. So the comments need to be submitted if they have any concerns to Rogers Communications. In support of the application, Rogers submitted a site selection justification report which outlined the reasons why they've selected the site and how it'll service the users in the area and how they will mitigate against impacts from visual appearances and the like. So the zoning does allow for the said use, and the official plan does support these types of uses on rural properties, as it will improve telecommunications access. So this tower is a function of the EORN approval to support cell phone, to improve cell phone gaps within all of Eastern Ontario. So Rogers was awarded, from what I understand, the tender or the contract to expand that service, and this is one of the towers that Rogers has proposed. So staff are supportive of the application. I will note that the consultation process doesn't end until September 12th. Industry Canada, essentially anybody who files comments or concerns to, in this case, Rogers Communication is required to respond to them. And Rogers is to submit to the Township, being our land use authority, that's how it's termed, a full summary of the consultation process, what their response was, how they've mitigated and responded to any concerns that were raised. So council is aware, because we did distribute to council a couple emails and a letter from one of the adjacent property owners expressing some concerns relating to health, environment, their existing livestock, Highway 17, the appearance and property value. And there was also a response from Eric, an email from Eric as well. So essentially, staff are looking for council's consideration and essentially approval, subject essentially to the conclusion of the consultation period and the response from Rogers and any disputes, and it'll all essentially get worked out in accordance with the protocol. So we're looking for council to approve the entering into a site plan agreement with the owners, subject to the completion of the consultation period. If there are any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor McLaughlin.
I'm just wondering, and I read those emails that come out today and these comments, and I wonder if the comments, is there a reason why we have to pass this tonight? Is there a deadline, or I guess where I'm coming from, I'm wondering if we could table this item until the next meeting when at that point, all the comments would have been submitted. Wouldn't that be correct?
I mean, it's entirely at the discretion of council. I mean, council could choose to postpone the approval or consideration to September 15th, which would be the next council meeting. That's really at your discretion, I would say, and that would position us beyond the September 12th date, and hopefully Eric would have an opportunity to send me his consultation summary. I will note that in the Industry Canada protocol, and it was attached to the email, probably not clearly outlined, but there was bullet points, and it speaks to what the province feels are what they call relevant and reasonable concerns. So that's just one thing to note, but yeah, at the discretion of council, you may choose to delay the approval.
I guess where I'm coming from, it would give our people, the people of the township, time so that their comments would be brought forward before this would be, we would make a pass on it. So that would be my thoughts are, and I don't see that there's a great big rush in this, and I don't, personally, I'm not against this. I just would like to have these people able to have all their comments brought forward before we made our decision. So I would make a motion that we table this item until the September the 15th meeting. Is it the 15th, Ivan? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
I'll put that out on the table. I wonder if there'd be a seconder for that?
Is there a seconder? Seeing none? Thank you. Councillor Mackay?
I just want to say that if you ever try and make a phone call in Beachburg, or even call from the council to a tractor, you lose the call. And that happens all the time. So people in Beachburg need, well, I don't have to tell you. It's really bad. It's bad reception. Well,
Yes.
I don't have to tell you either. Anyways, let's see this go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Nicholson?
From that location with the 4G network, I believe you can reach just about all the points in the township, on the far end of the township. So I can appreciate the necessity for that location. I also understand this is a two-step process. We approve the site plan, but they still need a building permit in order to put the tower up.
So Eric, being the professional in the world of communication towers, has emailed me indicating that they are exempt of building permits. Now, I haven't verified that with our CBO, but he did provide me the legislation and regulations, so I got to follow up with our CBO to that respect. So there may be a need for a building permit based on my conversation with Eric. There isn't, because it's federally regulated, but we will verify that.
Councillor Olmsted?
Yeah, I can, well, 99% confirm that that's accurate, that they don't need a building permit. And I understand Councillor McLaughlin's hesitancy. This is always probably the top election issue that we hear about during election time, campaign time, is high speed and cell phone service. And having gone through it personally, some people's feelings are going to get hurt. Everybody wants it until it affects their backyard. I can tell you that the only reason I know that there's one on my properties is you tell me there's one. I don't even know it's there. So it affects nobody locally whatsoever. So the only way you know is you see a red flashing light now and again if you're on that side, but it really doesn't affect anybody. So just my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Ivan?
Yeah, maybe if I could just add to, just for the general public, is that by council approving the entering into a site plan agreement, it doesn't nullify the public consultation process. That continues to exist, and Rogers has a commitment to respond to and address any reasonable and relevant concerns. So it's not just ending any consultation, like the consultation process continues, and there's a process, and they have to respond to the concerns, and if there's any issues, there's more avenues. So just make that clear that just the approval council doesn't end the consultation process. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor McLaughlin?
Yeah, just, I remember the last time and the consultation that went on, and I think it was moved 3 times before it was finally decided that this is where it's going to be. And that came from the people. And that's where my thoughts are coming from. I'm not against putting up this, and I totally agree with Councillor Nicholson. My only comment, and the reason I'd like to have it put on the 15th, is so that the public would have they would have their say. And because now, if it was me, I'd go, well, why bother? It's already approved. So that was my reason. But if council wishes to go ahead, that's fine. But the last time, it was 3 times the proposal was made before finally the site plan and the tower went up.
Okay, thank you. But we are keeping within the time frame of what was allotted to us. Is the open period hasn't closed, so it's still open. So that process is still happening.
That's correct.
Councillor
So-
Olmsted.
So just to confirm the process, I'm a bit foggy about it now, it's been years. Have all the local property owners been notified of this, and we've received, they would have sent letters, notifications, and we received feedback from them?
Yeah, so the Rogers Communications sends them out directly, and they were sent on August 9th. So the residents within 900 feet of the tower, the outside diameter of the tower, received a package from Rogers advising them that a tower would be is being proposed in that location. And the residents that received that, or any residents for that matter, any public body, could voice concerns or support for the application up until September 12th. That's a full 30. In fact, it's 30 days from the newspaper notice, so it's, in fact, they're getting 33 days to provide comments. Yes.
Okay, so the motion is still on the floor. We're going to vote on that motion. All in favor of the motion? Carried, thank you. Councilor McLaughlin?
I'm opposed to it. I just want that noted.
Okay, so let the record show. Councilor McLaughlin is a... So now we have to have a recorded vote, okay? The clerk will run the recorded vote. But I didn't
We've
ask,
already
I didn't ask
voted?
for nays.
No, it's not, no, I'm not asking for a recorded vote.
Okay.
But when you said it's carried, it's not carried unanimously. That's all I'm asking
Okay,
for.
it was carried, but one abstainer. Okay. All right, so noted. So at this time, I'd ask if anybody would like to make a motion to extend our meeting. We're 5 minutes from the close.
Should be quick.
Okay.
They always are.
First by Councilor Olmsted, second by Councilor Nicholson, and I'm asking for half an hour. Okay. Do I need a show of hands? All in favor of the motion? Carried, thank you. Okay. I'm only looking at 30 minutes. Okay, site plan approval, Whitewater Internet Solutions. A recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region authorize entering into a site plan agreements with the owners/applicants to govern the construction of communication towers at the properties located at 987 Grand Settlement Road, 1744 Bromley Line, 1100 Lookout Road, and 3479 McLaughlin Road. And number 2, that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve in principle the installation of a communication tower and installation of the communication tower and infrastructure at the municipally owned properties at 990 Colesmith Road, which is our landfill, and 44 Gould Street, Cobden, which is our water tower, and to direct staff to bring forward an agreement with Whitewater Internet. Motion and a seconder, please. Reeve Rigier, Councillor Olmsted. Back to Ivan, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'll speak to the 4 first sites. These are all privately held properties. The names of the owners are listed in the first paragraph of the background. But essentially, Whitewater Internet is proposing to install 5 towers in total. Each tower would be, 40 meters in height, or 131 feet, and would occupy a space of 16 square meters. So Whitewater Internet is a local internet company. It's represented as Adam Scott and Joey Hitchens, and they are looking to sort of expand their network throughout the township over Grant Settlement Road area, Bromley Line, Lookout Road, McLaughlin Road, and around the landfill, Colesmith Road. So they filed 4 applications for private properties for site plan approval. They've also proceeded with the consultation process in accordance with the protocol, and we haven't received any calls or concerns from adjacent landowners. So with respect to those 4 sites, staff are supportive of the development and are recommending to council that we enter into agreements with both the owners and applicants. It'd be a 3-party agreement because the applicant, being Whitewater Internet, would be responsible for the construction, maintenance of the tower, and then the owners would authorize the applicant to install the tower. So the second part of the recommendation speaks to authorizing Whitewater Internet to install a tower at the landfill property, but also install infrastructure on our water tower. Council may recall a couple things. One is we entered into an agreement with Cogeco about a year and a half ago pertaining to their infrastructure on our water tower. And we also passed a capital budget item for the expansion of broadband services in the township as a potential to expand broadband services, but also to expand the communication network for the fire department. So there was a budgeted capital budget item of $65,000. So essentially what we're proposing to council here is that as part of an agreement, a lease agreement for the use of our land and the tower, we would essentially be authorized to use their towers to install our communication, the fire department communication devices, to expand the fire department communication network, if you will. So item 2, recommendation is that the staff would come back to council on September 15th with a lease agreement, which would explain what the exchange of service is for the lease of land, and how that could sort of be monetized, if you will, to some extent, and present that agreement with council for the authorization with that respect. This report was prepared in consultation with the fire department and public works and other staff as necessary. So we're looking for your support on this, council. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Councillor Mackay.
Yeah, I deal with these guys. We have an account with them, and they're very good. And our internet is excellent, and Netflix is good. So, yeah, I agree with everything they say. They do a good job. Let me put it that way.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, I agree. It's much needed, but I think in the agreement, we have to make sure that if there is any taxes associated, property taxes associated on our land when we're basically leasing it to others, that they're responsible for them. Just a note, because there should be.
That's noted, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, this is a small business in Whitewater region that has jumped leaps and bounds over the past 2 years, really. Before that, there was lots of planning, lots of discussion, but the service that they're providing in not a small area, but in a large portion of the area of the township as a whole is incredible. And it's not because, they're and the other providers, such as Cogeco or EnergyCO, aren't able to do it. It's just the infrastructure's not there, and these guys are filling a gap. And the service, I like Councillor Mackay, am on Whitewater Internet, and it's incredible, the difference between, where you were on copper before. So I'm in support of this. And I just want to make a note, they're following the same procedures as any other tower would be following. It's just their height is smaller, so the impact on adjacent residences is lower. But they follow the exact same procedures. The second thing I just want to highlight, Mayor, is I just wanted to thank staff. One of the strategic, priorities for the township and the council, and we all saw it during the election period, was communications. It was cell service and it was internet. And we have, in 3 years, supported that coming to fruition. Now, we didn't create the companies and we didn't do, but we're facilitating it. We're taking away the red tape. We're taking the time to make sure that these services are there for our residents. And I just want to thank staff for taking that strategic direction, and actually we've achieved something. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor McLaughlin?
Yeah, I guess, Ivan, you were talking about the communications for the fire department. That would be in the contract, would it?
Yes, that's correct. So
on our the tower at the landfill.
yeah, so they're proposing this company's proposing 5 towers, one including the landfill. In my conversation with the fire department as late as this afternoon, they are seeking to put devices or antennas on the landfill one and another site somewhere else to expand their network of communication. Yes.
Okay. When we put it on their tower, would that would go? Because we have the landfill. That would be in that agreement that So that would not cover the 60-some thousand dollars. We would have to pay for the device, but we don't have to pay for the tower.
That's correct. So,
Yeah,
this lease agreement it will become quite complex because they're leasing land from us. We're getting to put our communication infrastructure, but also we're seeking for them to provide us internet at certain locations. So there's a variety of variables, and we're exchanging services in support of the lease of land. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm totally in agreement. I like the idea. The fire department, I know, need better communications, and I think also the road crew could use better communications within their trucks. So I think it would be a double win. Thank you.
Yes, it's to cover dead spots, and that's the problem. Anywhere in Renfrew County, the Ottawa Valley is dead spots. Councillor Nicholson.
It's a great point, Councillor McLaughlin, and I'd like to add to that. I would love to hear more, once the project gets a little bit, the emergency services portion of this, I'd like to hear back from the fire chief. What does it look like? What's the coverage like? Are paramedics going to be able to access our towers for their comms? Is it improving emergency response in Whitewater holistically, or is it just our firefighters and our road crews? So anyway, if I can get that put on just to give us some better perspective as to what we can achieve with that money, it'd be appreciated.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, call for vote. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Now we move on to item 7, notice of motion. Recommendation of the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region direct the CAO to develop a public consultation and engagement policy to set clear expectations and guidance with regard to public notice, information, consultation, and engagement on township business. Motion and seconder, please. Councillor Nicholson then actually brought it forward, and Councillor Mackay. Thank you. This goes to Councillor Nicholson.
Thanks, Mayor. So I just, this motion came forth as a result of some stuff that came up to a head this spring. I just wanted to give you some of my thoughts on it before we gave it to the staff before we voted on it and confirm what we would like the staff to do. So communication has always been important to the township, and again, that was one of the issues that was raised in the election quite clearly from the community. And we've made significant improvements. I've seen things, the web page has changed and been updated. Quarterly reports, social media, radio ads, newspaper ads, mail-outs, tax bill mail-outs, live streaming all of this, right? And keeping it going with all the different systems over COVID. I think it's commendable how much increase we've made in terms of the effort of communication. And I think right now is an opportunity for us to go back and reassess it based on some of the things we've learned. When we look at the different segments of our population, the segments use different means of communication. When you talk to a young person between the ages of 20 and 25 and you ask them what they know about what council does or what's on our agendas, they don't track it. They're not on Facebook, they're on Instagram, right? When you talk to anyone 25 and older, they're familiar with Facebook, but their Facebook stuff is full. And really, unless somebody they know shares it or comments on it, it doesn't really raise to their level of awareness. Not everybody listens to Heritage Radio. Not everybody reads the paper. I've been guilty of that myself. So no one medium is going to reach everyone, nor will the information that we throw out on these mediums actually stick. So the question is, what do we want to do? People talk about a push or a pull system. Should we try to keep pushing information out there, spending all this money and only reaching certain portions? Should we just focus on a website that has easy to read, information that can be found at the touch of a button or two, and people can be referred back to that one point of excellence? I'm not sure which way is right, but I know that what we're doing now may not be achieving everything we could for the effort that we're putting forth. The second point is just a couple recent examples. The parquet in Westmeath and the noise bylaw are ones that have struck me where, the noise bylaw we had out for 60 days. I mean, we voted to put it out in the community in May, and I got a flurry of phone calls in the last week of June, right? Because people were just realizing that we had, and most people thought we had already approved it in May. So the communication on that one, I thought there's got to be a better way to do that. And I'm also interested in better defining what level of action we want as part of our decision when we decide to explore an item. So the Planning Act defines timelines and public meetings for Planning Act items, but we don't have that when it comes to decisions that we make about different projects. So I would like to, the optimal in my mind at this point, without further investigation, would be to have some kind of menu of communication options that we apply in specific decisions. So the example I would give you is Olmsted Jeffrey Road. When we did that analysis, Lane and Ivan had a wonderful Zoom call with experts that briefed the community people that lived on that road. They had an opportunity to ask questions, get input, and that was all reflected back to us for our final decision. We don't apply that same rigor of community involvement in other decisions, and I'm not sure why. And I'd like to make sure that we consider it becomes a conscious decision as to what level of public engagement, what means of communication that we're going to choose to do, that we apply for. Is it a dollar figure? Is it set by the nature of the proposal? What might trigger that? So that was the foundation before that that was the background on the motion that I submitted. So for your comment and consideration.
Thank you. Councillor McLaughlin. No, sorry, Mackay.
Okay, I just want to say, Councillor Nicholson's right. I get some weird people, I don't know where they get their information. They call me, and it's so stupid. You're thinking, where are you getting this, from the moon? And no, I heard it. It's on council. So anything we can put out to the public, let's do it, because well, I don't have to tell you guys stuff you get.
The same people have called some of us.
Yeah.
You're not alone. Anyone else? Councillor Jackson.
Thanking this back. This was basically the notice of motion that was brought by me earlier. And yes, I am in favor of it. I think it's important to get information out to the ratepayers in a timely fashion. And I don't know, it seems to work to get a following for Facebook or whatever. If you do some Facebook contests, and then you seem to get a lot of followers with that. And the more followers you get, the more information is going to get out there. Certainly with our shop has created a number of followers for Whitewater. I think it has. I don't know if it has or not, but I mean, if they have to, submit it to somebody, but the problem is then it takes staff time. It does take staff time to get all that information, but you have to get the following to be able to push it out no matter what you do. Certainly in the news, great to have what we have, that notice that goes out every week in the newspaper, a radio ad, but the problem is with us being in the middle, Renfrew, Pembroke, like where do you choose? We're in a difficult situation to get information out there, and I think if staff set their mind to where they think it's the best, to put any sort of dollars in, and then they can throw that into a budget discussion for 2022. But I think it's important to try to get that out there as much as possible. Any kind of information, what we're doing, when we're doing it, when things are due, great things that are happening in the municipality, everything and anything. The more we put out, the more people are going to follow, I think. But thank you for bringing that back.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Councillor McLaughlin?
Yeah, I totally agree, but the problem is, how do you hit these targets? I mean, we had the problem in Westmeath. Well, it's an older age group that was the target. The target and the reason I think the success worked on the Jeffrey Lake Road is because the whole group have a network. There's one person plugs it in and it goes to everybody. In Westmeath, well, we did what we thought but there's nobody it's to try and get it spread around. How you do it, I have no idea. I mean, I realize that the circumstances weren't good because of the COVID. We couldn't have, and those people are used to town meetings. So I think we have to look at the target of the group that we're trying to hit. We can put out all the advertising we want, but we have to get it to the right people. And how to get it to the right people, especially at this time, very hard. I give a lot of Councillor Nicholson. I think it's a great idea. I think maybe we have to either staff or figure out the target that we and how are we going to do it. That's because communications are essential and it makes everything run smooth. If we get the communications out there and get the feedback, then the people know what's going on, and it works so much better. The people on the Jeffrey Lake Road are so happy with the communications. That's what's going on. But once again, like I say, they have a network on how to get it around.
Thank you. Councillor.
Yeah, hit the nail on the head. We've got this experience, lots of experience. We've gone through some COVID times, which have changed, the needs and requirements of how you communicate. I'm of the opinion right now that I think it might be a waste of money for radio and newspaper and even Facebook. Like, I mean, I don't know how many here, but I can't keep up with Facebook. I don't even see the township stuff half the time. Like, so. I don't want to preempt staff. I want staff to, my proposal is that they've got the expertise in this, but we make the website the best website where, the current issues that we think are current and important that we need right up slapping you in the front. And we do quarterly town halls, a roving town hall where we go out and interact with the public and they can come and ask questions, or we say, hey, these are the 3 agenda and we're going to talk about them. There has to be a better way to do this. And be constrained to the same system. I say throw it out there. Let us decide on some new way of achieving the same aim. So anyway, throw it out there. It's just an investigative type motion.
Okay, thank you. So at this time we will vote on the motion. All in favor? Carry. Now we do have another notice of motion.
Do we not ask for any notices? Okay.
I am, yes. I haven't wrote down so I wouldn't forget. Going around the table, so re-rig first, please, notice of motion.
Thank you, Mayor. I just would like to bring a notice of motion to see if consider flying the Every Child Matters flag on September 30th, in the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. And I just want to bring that forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's just as long as everyone understands that's the new federal holiday.
And I should just note there'll be a report on that on September 15th.
Yes.
After
so
I speak
more
to
info is coming.
Yes. The 30th?
September 30. You will. Your staff.
It's not provincial, but it's federal.
Yeah, it's federal.
So some apply, and probably our policy, and Rob will have a report, but probably our policy that it will be, but.
Okay, so thank you. We'll come back up on the 15th. And then we go to Councillor Jackson. Well, that I know of, I'm going to ask after if there's anyone else.
Well, after reading minutes of July 7th, which I was away for, I noticed that there was a motion was set aside. So unless somebody can enlighten me what the process, like I know what the process is to bring it back on, I need to lift, but if there was something, somebody was waiting on a question to be answered, and that was with regards to entering agreement with Whitewater and Wildland Tours Limited for emergence. So has the question been answered? And if not, could it be answered over the 6th, where I'm going to ask that it to be lifted? I don't know the question, but I believe somebody said there needed to be answers found before they entered into the agreement.
but
Okay,
the
does this
motion
go- Does this go to the CAO?
Sure. I know that council put to, not to a certain time, so not a deferral, but a postponement. To the councilor's point, the motion will have to be to lift it. I've received some concerns about the perception of designating an organization as an emergency service. Having reread after the postponement, it does say in there, because the proponent wants to be as an emergency services, although I have constantly said this does not give you status. This is really ensuring that we have access to boats and drivers when we need them. I think Wilderness Tours believes that this will give them an in with Transport Canada, that in a navigational ban, that will mean they can be on the river. And I've repeatedly said that is not the township's intent. So re-looking at the language, if the intent is our intent, which is to make sure we have boats available when we need them in the case of an emergency, that's one thing. So the language, having reread it after the fact, could be tweaked. So that means if bringing it back to clarify all those and understand if an agreement is necessary, I think that can be done. Work from a staff perspective, although it went to the emergency committee, can be looked at more further. I'm not sure if that was the nature of it, but I think this came about around the same time, pressure to open up Whitewater access, and whether these two issues are, as I sense that, but I know I've done some preliminary work, and the emergency program committee have already looked at the agreement, so we could probably look at it and be ready for October 6th.
Okay, so I would have a motion to lift. Do I need to do that, or can you back on October the 6th?
So it's a procedural motion, so it's not on the agenda, so you need 2/3 to add it. So if there's 2/3 support it today, it would come back at the next one. If you're just giving notice, the motion to lift comes at the next. I would suggest it'd be nice from a staff perspective that we have a little bit of time to.
That's why I was suggesting maybe bring the motion to lift October 6th, and then them
sure,
staff time to do it for the following meeting.
Yep, that would be great.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So that leaves more than enough time to what we need to do without putting any pressure on any staff member.
Certainly, and if there's any councillors that have any concerns or questions about the agreement, if you can let me know, and then I can follow up. Mr. Kowalski, he and I have been in communication, and then I've been following up with other emergencies to make sure that the intent of the agreement is clear and that the language is.
I agree.
So
I think it's important to have some sort of an agreement in place, both and for us or whoever else wants to offer their services. But in the past, it seems it's always been Wilderness Tours that have off services that I've heard of in different situations where people, Joel Kowalski has gone out in the kayak and that, especially in the wintertime. It seems to be more winterized. But if OWL wants to come forward with a suggestion also want to be added, then I have no problem with them. But I think, I don't have a problem with anybody coming forward, but I think because they've brought this forward, I think it's important not only for Joe, for Wilderness Tours, for Whitewater and Wildland Tour Limited to have that on their books, but it's important for us to have it on our book. Also, if it is required, then obviously it's like a volunteer service charging, but WSIB, all of the insurance coverage and all that. So those are the questions that I would have as well. So perhaps you can look into that upon that time, just to see what or if anything is required, and then maybe reach out to OWL and see if they're interested, or I don't know if there's another group that would have those types of boats available. I don't think there is, but we don't just want willy-nilly people going out there either. We want somebody that we know has been trained in whitewater rescue and all of that, that they have agreed that they understand what they're doing, and it's not just somebody that kayaks through that says, oh, I'm going to go out and help. It's fine to say that, but you want to make sure that you're covered. We're covered.
I agree. Thank you. Councillor Nicholson, you had your hand up.
One of the questions that came forward was, I think it was designated essential service, and other companies were interested. How do I become a designated essential service? What are the parameters to do that? Is it only for whitewater rafting? What if it's for another emergency capability that I could offer the township? So it was, those are the questions we didn't, we
And if I
wanted to
can
make sure
be
we had them
clear
answered.
on that, the goal is not to designate anybody as an essential services, so that's the first thing. Because I don't think we can say, hey, you're an essential service on the Ottawa River. I don't think we have that power. The other thing I've repeated numerous times in writing and verbally is the fire department does not do water rescue. So if our only emergency service is not even in that ball game. So what we need to do is just clarify what this is and isn't for all parties, because it's not like, hey, I can go on there and Transport Canada can't pull me off. It's like, no, this is if we need a boat. It should not, and it's not one of the clauses and is designated an essential services, but right now there's clauses that say recognize as an essential service, and I think in retrospect that might need to be clarified. So I think the time frame that the councillor is suggesting gives us enough time to look at all those issues and any other ones that come up. But I think if other people are interested, we should just be very clear that this is not about declaring essential services. It's about a fee for service or a service agreement. So just, but it'll come up on the 6th, and then you'll have the fulsome discussion 2 weeks later.
Councillor McKay.
Thank you.
I just wondered about if you got somebody, whoever does it, and how liable are we if we say, yeah, you can make the rescue, or you're affiliated with us? I mean, what's our insurance going to say? What's our...
Yep, so we'll look at that, and I think to reiterate, the fire department is not in the water rescue business, so you can't contract somebody to help you out for something that you're not doing. So we have to we'll take the time, but any of those questions, if you can forward to me, and I'll make sure that's comes back the second meeting in October.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McLaughlin.
Yeah, coming back to that, I remember in 2017 when I think it was 17, and Mayor Moore would remember they wanted to do a check on the people during the flood, and I think that's something to look at as well. We were lucky; we found 3 out of 4 people that were trained in whitewater rescue, that were able to go out and do that wellness. Like, that's not something that our fire department got. So that may be something else that needs to be worked in. If we could come to do that, something like that, that would just was a thought that was triggered in my mind, because that turned into quite an issue.
You did, thank you. Anyone else? Sean, you had your strum was stretching. Okay, sorry. Okay, so at this time we move ahead then. That stays as a notice of motion. Okay, anyone else with a notice of motion? Councillor Nicholson?
Yeah, just a notice of motion to discuss community signage on county and township road. Do you want more detail now, or when I do the motion? Community signage.
Community signage on township and county roads?
Yeah. Sorry, I don't want to belabor tonight, but
Yeah.
I can discuss it later. Talk to
Yeah,
staff.
no, there's a few people in the room would have to do some homework on that, so. Okay. Councillor McKay?
I just thought I'd bring this up. If anybody's seen the sign that we got money from the township to put up for the fair, it's very nice. Did you see it in town? The red sign?
Oh, the sign on
Yeah.
Stewart Street and on the lot there, yes.
Yeah. And we still don't see that rink painted. I just want to mention that to you, Robert. Just
That's
saying.
been discussed. It's been discussed. I don't know where it stands right now. Okay, thank you. So, that's it? Notice of motion, we move on? We move on to 8.1, adoption of the minutes. Recommendation of the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the regular minutes of July 7th. Motion and seconder, please. Reeve Regier and Councillor McKay, all in favor? Carried, thank you. 8.2, special council. Recommendation of the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region to approve the special minutes of August 9, 2021. Motion and seconder, please. Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor Olmsted, all in favor? Carried, thank you. 8.3, closed council. meeting, July 7. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the closed session minutes of July 7th and August 9, 2021, understanding that they remain confidential. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Olmsted, Reeve Regier. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Correspondence. There's lots of correspondence this month. It's just for file. 9.1 correspondence.
No, so we'll put it back on September 15th.
Okay. Did all the rest of them open then? Okay. All right, thank you. So then we move into 10 bylaws. Recommendation, be it resolved that the bylaws listed on the September 1, 2021 agenda be taken as read and passed. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Councillor Olmsted. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And we have no closed session, so we will go adjourned at 8:14. Thank you very much.